Everybody, thank you for joining us again for another episode of Pursuit of Purpose. I'm Robbie.
I'm Chuck.
And today we have with us a very special guest. He's another member of the medical community. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself.
Hi, my name is Dr. Adriano Goffi. I work here locally at Lumberton Altus Hospital. I was born in Argentina. My life kind of took me throughout South America, Argentina, Venezuela, before finally settling into the United States in South Florida, where most people from Argentina and Venezuela end up when they come here. And from there, I have two brothers, a sister. My parents are happily married still. Went to school here and went to the United States Navy, put myself through medical school as well, and went to residency in Phoenix, Arizona, and then ended up in Houston, Texas, because that's where my parents ended up being when I finished. After about 12, 13 years of schooling and being away from family, it was time to come together, and the journey brought me here where I met you guys, and here we are today.
Wow.
Yeah.
You just really kind of gave a great synopsis of your journey. That's amazing. So you were born in Argentina.
Yes.
How old were you when you...
So my father owned clothing factories. It was a kind of interesting, growing up down there. So Argentina, we left, and they were kind of going back and forth, because they would change like import taxes and stuff, and and then he met somebody there, and my father met a business partner there, and they started a successful business operations.
Right.
And but at the time in Venezuela, as basically presidents change, so does safety and safety concerns and things like that. I mean, the amount of stories, if my father was here, that he could tell you about stuff that happened, or crime or things like that. It's pretty amazing that you can even go through that. So my parents decided for a better life for all of us was to come to the United States, and which, down there, they did very well. They did very, very, very well. But when you leave, it's not like here where it's just like, hey, you have a bank account, you could just grab all your stuff and take off. I mean, we took off and we left a lot behind. You're limited to what you can bring. However, my mom did bring a big old vacuum. I forget what brand it was, but she brought this ridiculous. I remember this ridiculous vacuum. I mean, the old school,
The canister.
I don't know. It was like
I know.
I don't know why Luxor or something is running in my brain.
Yeah,
Like Electrolux, maybe?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I remember that stupid vacuum.
Is that great vacuum?
Yeah, that's why.
I'm not the only one on that, so we went to South Florida, and it was tight. I mean, he had enough to buy this ridiculously, this Oldsmobile. I mean, this just boat of an object, and a pickup truck. And my dad met a Army vet named Dave. I'll never forget this. And this guy was, I mean, the typical vet. I mean, like, Dave was, and he owned an air conditioning business, and my dad air conditioning business. I mean, imagine this. This is what I grew up with. So we left, and my parents, were very well down there. My dad didn't finish, but he's an engineer. Most of my brothers are engineers, and all of us. And he came here, and he convinced him to start a business together of Central Air. What is Central Air? We don't have Central Air in South America. So between my brother and my brother Christian, reading in English, that we just got here, my dad learned how to put central AC systems in houses off a manual, and us reading it to him. I mean, my dad's, absolutely brilliant. I mean, so we came. When I was young, I used to think we came with nothing, and I think that's probably one of the first lessons I had was that's a complete lie. I mean, you can come, with no money, but I came from just two incredible parents. I mean, the top 1%. I mean, despite not necessarily having, the education of degree or something from here, they are the top 1% of thinkers. I mean, they're the most incredible. I mean, to do it to do it at the age of almost 50. I mean, how do you reinvent yourself and your family? How do you leave a success story, of another place just for the safety of your kids? I mean, that story, as my days go, is completely different. But so we left and we came here. And my dad opened. He's basically piggybacked off this, and he had this air conditioning, polar air, and that's how he got a work visa.
Yeah.
We were able to go to school, and we did that in South Florida, and we managed to get an apartment, which I mean, it was like 5 guys in one, and because my brother-in-law was there, and then I slept with my sister and I were in the same room, and then my brothers, and it was like a hotel because anybody who needed help, they would stay in this apartment, and this tiny little apartment, but it was more. I never noticed a difference. Actually, I didn't think it was small or nothing. To be honest, I didn't feel that.
What age were you when you actually did move here?
So we came a couple times before, but it's hazy. It's maybe 6, 5, 6.
Okay,
I mean,
pretty young.
Hazy. Yeah, it's hazy because you think it's later. Maybe it was early. I mean,
well, at that age,
I remember 10 years old. That's I mean, I remember that apartment and stuff like that, but I remember 10. I remember 10 specifically, and it was like probably not my earliest memory, but like where the lights came on from then on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And it was a very memorable thing because it was my birthday party, I think, like, and my uncle, I mean my uncle Ernesto, he worked for Domino's, and they had they had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle promo.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so he had a teenage he had a Ninja Turtle outfit, and for my birthday he came and he was full costume, dude. Like, I mean, so that was like the first lights in. Like,
I gotta ask, which one was it?
That was Leonardo.
Leonardo.
Okay. And my favorite was not that. It was but it didn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, it was like.
That's awesome.
And he was full character, man. I mean,
that is great.
So my uncle was like 6'3", he's a big, tall guy. So obviously, like, it's not built for 6'3", 6'4".
No, not at all.
He's got his legs coming out of the bottom, and it was like, there was kids there, and it's just like my life turned on that day. Like, I don't remember I mean, you remember aspects, but
pieces of
after that day, my life turned on, if that makes sense. Like, I remember everything after that. I remember my teachers. I remember, I just, that was, and again, I remember 5, I remember 4, those little glimpses, but I will never forget, like, that was the day, like, my 10th birthday was the day I have turned on. That was the day that, I started to have goals, right? Sports, all of those things, even though I was playing them before, like, the direction was like just more significant, I think.
Do you think that at that point in your life you realized that this is where you were going to be, and you established a sense of security in that place? Because before that, y'all were back and forth from.
I mean, my life is actually built. I guess I've always been temporary. Actually, once I graduated high school, I was always temporary. But I think mentioning it that way, I guess that was probably the beginning of me remembering my stability until it became kind of and I wouldn't call it unstable, but like just more random, more my dad would call Oliver North, I guess. From that moment to finishing, basically starting the military, it was a very secure foundation.
Yes,
that was. I guess if you want to put a block of life, I would say that's right. That's what I remember from that moment to I left the military. It was all very stable.
She went straight into the military?
No, I didn't. So I graduated very young in high school. So I did 2 years of kind of college. Not really 2 years. I guess it was like a year and a half, but it was and I went in and I was. God, carry the 2. It was 2 years after, because I wanted to be E3, so I wanted to get the credits in.
Yeah.
Still very young. I mean, I was still I think I was 19 years old. And I went to what was, pre-med, and I claimed my independence financially very young. I started working when I was 13 years old, and it was Antonio's Pizza in Davie, Florida, which housed everyone in my family. So all of us worked there one way or another. Dishwashing, driver. Jimmy was the manager, and Antonio was the owner. But Jimmy was the manager of that store. And since I was 13, I started working, started saving. That's how I bought my first car. I was a bus boy. And I'll never forget closing, listening to "Lady in Red" like every
Over and over and
every
over.
night, every night. It was always on. It was like the channel. It was 50s, 60s, 70s, and today. Which is now kind of hard to hear because it's like you hear 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 2000s, and today.
Right.
Wow, that's changed. But so from, and I think that's what, so 10. And then I remember 13. I started working. And from there, it was kind of one of those things that my parents taught us, work ethic, right? I mean, so I never personally had to help around the house. My brothers and sisters that were older when we first came, they all pulled together, right? So when my brothers worked and my sister, like, they helped. I mean, whatever was needed. I mean, my dad made ends meet, but you know what I'm saying? Like they everybody in the family pulled together, right? If anything was needed, the family came together. But I started working because they were working, followed suit. And still maintained incredible grade point average, and sports. I played very, very high competitive hockey. And my brother played soccer. I mean, he's in the college Hall of Fame for soccer. It's dude, I love talking. I could go on tangents, so I'm sorry. Keep me focused.
No, it's okay. Go on, tangent.
So
hockey in South Florida.
Yeah.
I know. So my dad played pro, but he played old school pro in Argentina. My dad played pro with quads, okay, and the small, almost like cane stick, all right, and the ball probably weighed like 50 pounds. It felt like one of those. And he played for River, which is like a major club. I don't know if you follow soccer down there, but River is a major club. But he also played for Argentina. Like, I mean, he played pro. I mean, it was legitimate pro hockey.
That's wild.
So we're very athletic. I mean, all of it, very handy and very, very athletic.
Yeah.
Except for my brother Lonnie. He's not unathletic, but like he was good. But like, not everybody. But he's very brilliant. He's he's a mechanical engineer. But Christian and I and even my sister are very handy, like with tools and stuff like that. So my brother, when I was 13, he was, when we first got here, he was doing deliveries of newspapers, which my dad was doing before he was going to work to fix the ACs. But, he was just too tired. So he let my brother do it. And my brother was 14 behind this big old Econoline van, like tossing, doing the paper route. Man, we made ends meet, man. I mean, whatever we had to do. I mean, and then I'll never forget my brother told me this. So like when he would go to school, like the teachers knew that he did that. So like he basically got a pass to sleep the first and second.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a big soccer star for the school. So like, but,
they took care of him.
They took care of him.
Yeah.
But all of us worked. I mean, and my sister went to school, and my sister's very bright. She actually was a translator linguist for the FBI. She got recruited by them, and she worked with them for a long time. Actually, it wasn't until she started to have kids where, unfortunately, the FBI doesn't take little cases, right? So when she started to have kids, she had to be in interrogations and then not just say what they're saying, also give the feeling, the sentiment. And once the kids came into the picture, she was like, yeah, no more for this. So now she is she's got her master's, and she works for the school system now. She tests all the kids to whether they're meeting criteria, what they need for education, what help they need. And she's in Cypress ISD.
Very cool.
Yeah, she's incredible.
That's a big district.
If there's a human that deserves everything in life, it's my sister. She's one of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. So yeah, she does that, and she's the oldest of the four of us. She just actually yesterday was her birthday.
Hey, okay.
Happy birthday,
We went to lunch on Saturday, and she's actually the reason why we're in Houston. Her husband got a job with Compaq in Tomball.
Okay.
And then from there he was with HP, and then my mother worked for South African Airways, and then Qatar Airways came here, and then she switched to Qatar so she could be close to her three kids.
Okay.
So and she's a bit older. She's 2569, so she's just turned. What did she turn? She turned 40.
69, and she turned 54.
54, yeah. Damn, sis.
Yeah.
Can't believe I turned 40. I guess, yeah.
Well, something I want to point out, hopefully your family will participate and listen to this. But something that I want to, it really sounds like you got a lot of love in your family.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my father, I would say my father was an incredible provider. Okay. But I've seen now, over time, my mother's always been the most loving person on the planet. I mean, it's like, I can't talk to her enough. I can't be in the house enough. That it's always, I want more, I want more, I want more. Which, I would say that I regret dramatically probably the last 10, 15 years of thinking that's annoying and probably not treating her the best that I should have, That's been a little bit of an awakening, My father was always more of a provider, I mean, my grandfather probably went to second grade, and my grandfather was incredible to be around, and that's because my dad's older. I naturally lost him when I think I was like 12 years old or 13 years old, 14 years old, something like that. And he's really progressed. I think men of that generation, right, 1942, right. I mean, with us, he was the provider, right, and loving. Don't get me wrong, but more, I wouldn't call him stern. It was just more of like, his job was the provider, right? And I remember he wears this chain, and I remember being, I mean, I don't know, I probably was one or two. My mom always doesn't understand why I remember this, but in Venezuela, we would always go visit this area with pools, and I remember him always throwing me up, and his chain would always hit me. And I remember that memory. He still wears it to this day.
Really? That is cool.
Yeah, and I remember that, and that's like the playful time. Does that make sense? But really,
absolutely.
My relationship with my dad initially, I wouldn't call it like totally like this, but it's very apprenticeship, if that makes sense. Like, I was the youngest. I was there. I was reliable. I need to do this. I need to do that. I mean, man, I probably could. Oh, not a new car now, but I mean, with him, we probably could take apart a car and build it together. Anything that needed to be done, we needed to fix. I mean, my father, could fix a light bulb. I mean, you know what I mean? It's something like that. You know what I mean? It's so he taught me things, and then when my sister had kids, it was kind of like the tail end where he was kind of starting to stop working, kind of thing, and then like he moved here, and he became a grandfather, like you saw it, right? Like he was a grandfather, and then with my kid now, like even though this is kind of the same as my sister's, but it's a 5-year-old, and all my other nieces and nephews are 20s, they're older. The relationship between him and I has changed. It's like, we shared bigger moments, and now that he's there, like, he just looks at you different, like a parent looks at you different, and it's I mean, it's beautiful, and so I've seen that evolving, of love, and then my brothers and sisters. I mean, my brother Christian lives in Florida. My brother Lonnie and Leonardo. So it's Karina Fabiola, and then it's Leonardo Gabriel, Christian Fabrizio, and I'm Adriano Enrico. I don't ever go by Enrico, but anyways,
I'm gonna have to remember that.
The names are pretty cool. Yeah, the names are cool. You may not like them when you're a child because people make fun of you, but they're kind of cool. And we're all very close. I mean, distance, unfortunately. My brother Lonnie, when he had his kid Kiara, and for different reasons. He's in marketing, kind of online. He just decided to go back to Argentina, and then they went from Argentina, they went to Panama, and I might get this. Sorry, Lonnie, if I butchered the order, but it was like from Argentina, they went to Panama, and then Panama, they went to Peru, and then they struggled severely to try to get papers to come back. That took like 9 years.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, it took a long time. It took a very long time to get him back into the States. And then finally we were able to get him back, and he's here now. And my niece Kiara goes to Texas A&M. I think she's starting her sophomore year now. And then his wife Jessica, they live together in Tumble. And then my sister moved here for the compact, and then now they're in the Woodlands, and they have 3 kids. So speaking of her kids, this is actually a great story. So the first of our kind, our first American, our first American is Stefan Pecky.
Born here.
Born in the United States. But he wasn't just born here. Okay. My sister is, fair skin, beautiful brown hair. Her husband's got black eyes, black hair.
Come on.
And on the 4th of July, we have a freckled, redheaded baby.
Yeah.
That is my sister's kid, that's for sure. And it's definitely her husband's friend. It's like our firstborn was a light-skinned, freckled redhead born on the 4th of July.
Yes.
Yeah,
All American.
That's all American, baby.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just came out fireworks, man.
That is great.
Yeah, I mean, so. Yeah, fireworks rain.
He's the first.
He's the firstborn. He's our firstborn here. Yeah.
Yes.
And from there, she had the next one, Camila. Camila is just she's trying to get into a PA school. So if anybody wants to help out, she's very brilliant, very smart. She went to Texas A&M as well, and she's applying to some PA schools, and then my brother, then Kiara, and then then my brother Christian has 3 kids, all of them athletes in soccer. One of them went to University of Tennessee, the other one went to Jacksonville. All played collegiate soccer.
Sure.
And all my sister's kids were swimmers. Man, what a sport! Jesus Christ, I admire I admire the families that go through swimming.
Yes.
Holy cow.
Yes.
I thought my mom and I thought we had it bad playing hockey at 5 a.m. once or twice a week. Swimming, those kids went through. That's a lot of discipline. I really admire that.
Yeah.
And I talk to, we talk very often. My parents live kind of central, so the kids and everything, that we Saturday we were kind of all together, and for her birthday, and we try to get to the, it's rare that all of us, especially because my
I bet that is hard.
I mean, actually, it's a small world, man. Believe it or not. A lot of people try to do it for holidays. My brother Christian's done a good job of just randomly saying, "Hey, we're going," and that's one of the beauties, of traveling, right? I mean, I think waiting for a holiday is probably the worst thing to do. I think that mentality of waiting for a holiday is probably not ideal, right? It's a lot better to do it on a Tuesday or Thursday.
Absolutely.
You can fly cheaper.
Yeah.
It's like
more families. We talk to a lot of people in our industry, and more families do it in a bit of an off. And that may be early December, but we're not going to wait till the end. We'll get
exactly.
it.
Yeah, I mean, especially for me, I work 24-hour shifts here, right? So, now I probably worked the last 6 Christmas in a row. This was like the last one was the first time I woke up, with my daughter, and especially because now she's more conscientious. When she's 1, it was like, okay, I'll get there at 9 a.m, no big deal. But these next few years, I want to make sure I don't do that, right? I want to make sure that I'm not working, so we can spend, especially Christmas morning, But the problem is, if I work Christmas Eve, I'm not getting back till 10, so it's like you lost both. But when you start to work these things and you start to look at holidays, it's kind of like, what? I'd rather work the holiday, and then I will leave the Tuesday after.
Yes.
Because it's not, I don't have the traditional Monday through Friday.
Right.
And you realize how much emptier the beaches are, how much cheaper the hotels are. And you tend to enjoy it. It's a little tricky with school, but with the kids. But
you create your own holiday.
Yeah, exactly. You create your own holiday. In the end, you're going with your family, not the other people, right?
Well, you referenced here in the last few minutes about your career. So obviously, at some point, you made some fateful decisions. From school to the Navy, and then eventually to your practice.
Yeah, I mean, after September 11th, I don't know what happened. It was pretty innate. I mean, remember, I wasn't born here, but the U.S. has provided something for us as a family that. I mean, we are living the American dream, right? I mean, we are probably the definition of the American dream of coming. We came and, not to go political, but, we did come and we struggled very hard to get papers, to be here legally, now, it didn't affect me in the beginning being on the J visa and stuff like that because, I wasn't in college needing student loans because you can't get them and stuff like that. But it was a very big struggle. I actually got my citizenship through the military. That was not a reason necessarily why I went in, but, because I was here legally, we had a green card at the time.
Yeah.
So I didn't, need it. But after 9/11, I don't know what came over me. It was just something no, I'm going to join,
Well, thank you, by the way. Thank you very much for serving our country.
That was some of the best experience. I mean, when I decided to do that, I actually met my best friend, ever and still, months before that. So we saw each other once before because we lived in the neighborhood, and then I went to a recruiter, and then sure enough we had to do some of those training things, and saw him at one of those, and it was probably, I think it was like a solid 5 or 6 months prior. At that time it was really slow to kind of get in, like it wasn't just like ship out, especially in the Navy, it was different. And we did really well on our ASVAB scores, so it wasn't just like boatsmith, what I mean. I was going as a medic, and he went in as ET, so it was high end. He scored very well, and I scored very well. And I decided to go to the military, which is not an easy thing to tell your parents, and I still don't know what they felt. I don't. I know what they said they felt.
Right.
I don't know what they felt.
Yeah.
It was definitely not a time of peace,
Right.
by any stretch of the imagination. But, they do good, and they respected that decision. I got in, and I was going to school, and I think some of the best lessons of the military for me was, here I was working, right, and I think things got easy. Grades got easy for me, even though I was working 2 or 3 jobs. Money felt easy, and I think a lot of that was South Florida. Man, what a terrible place to grow up. What a great place to grow up. But what I mean by that is, there's different places, and I had a very good foundation of friends, and I had a very good foundation of family. But the fakeness, right? And, it's almost like if you look at Instagram now, you could just fall into this, like, everybody's doing well, everybody's new job is well. It's like everybody looks like it's million. It's like you lose out on reality almost of what it means for hard work, right? So I left to the military, and all my friends, I was kind of like an idiot, if that makes sense, right? And I was the beginning of an idiot, right? Like, that wasn't even the full idiot, right? Like, and so I go there, I'm doing well, and while I'm there, the military, I mean, it's a definition of psychology, Jesus, like that. They know exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it, how to break you down as a person, how to make you understand that you are nothing without a team, and then they build you back up, and they do a very, very good job. And then you find yourself, are you a lifer? Are you not a lifer? Right. So I got my citizenship, I was enlisted, and then I knew since I was 10 years old. I'm not kidding. I said, that's why I said the goal of 10. Like, I remember saying, somebody asked me, what are you going to do? I'm going to be a doctor. I have nobody medical in my family, but I said I was going to be a doctor. Like, period.
Was there something that inspired you back then?
I wouldn't call it inspiration, but the year before that, I had this close friend. Ryan. Okay, and a lot of these things, I was talking to a psychologist about this probably now like 4 years ago, and I didn't, realize the impact. We were 9, all right, and man, the kid lived with me. He came from a broken family, like the mother and stuff. It just was, divorced family, and they lived down the street. And he would always come to the house, and he was just very, my family. Everybody was welcome into the house. You'll hear this story probably today a few times, not just him, but so we would always ride our bike together, go to school together, everything. And Ryan was a very big lifer, for of friends, very very loved, and it was November 8th. It was voting day. Okay, and we went to breakfast, and I was sitting down, and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to get up and go." We always hung out like right by the bus stop area, and he grabbed a biscuit. He grabbed a biscuit, like messing around with one of the kids. He grabbed a biscuit, walked outside, and then I walk out about a minute later, and I see him stumbling, coughing, coughing up blood actually. And I run to him, and people were there, and out of nowhere, I just get somebody just like pushes me out of the way, and it was a doctor actually. He was bleeding out his mouth. He was born without a gag reflex, they said. So basically, he choked on this soft biscuit.
Oh no!
Okay, and I did CPR, put him in an ambulance, and he passed away.
Oh.
And I remember the story. I mean, obviously, I mourned him for but I'm guessing that's why.
Well, that's a big moment
because I couldn't. I couldn't save him, right? I would imagine that probably instilled something. I mean, it's also so young that it's like it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor because but somebody asked me after that, and I said it, and never turned back. But years later, I think about that story, and because I knew that it was a doctor that pushed me out of the way and all that stuff, but I didn't think. I remember now when I think about it, I do remember him pushing and saying, "I'm a doctor. Let me do this. Right? Let me help." And I remember that story completely different once I opened it up. When I started to think about it. With this guy. So that was, that calling. And remember, I didn't have anybody medical, so I was going to the military to be a doctor, which is a corpsman, which is like an EMT, which is not a doctor,
right?
But trust me, you do feel like it while you're in there because you do a significant amount of stuff, So I made the determination of I wanted to be a doctor. Well, before that, and learning, so there I got basically like EMT license, and then I got my surgical tech license. And when it was time to re-up, I was like, hey, I'll do it if you allow me to go to med school, but I'm not going to re-up. I'm not going to keep doing this. This is not what I want to.
Yeah, you want to go further.
And at that time, I was already taking classes. I knew what it meant now to be a physician. Meaning, I knew I had to go through pre-med. I knew I had to. So I got out, and I didn't have a lot of classes left. But when I got out, another very close friend of mine, Ricky, who was doing stuff online, selling stuff online on eBay. Man, I could barely turn on a computer. I hate technology, but him and I. He was doing it, and so we started to do it together, just sell like wheels and tires and basically on eBay. Okay. And I had the idea, I was looking at it, and I was like, dude, this is really annoying. Why can't we just put our damn phone number on here? So they could just call us.
Right.
This is so intricate. Just like, why don't we just do that? And sure enough, immediately it's just people started calling, and so that business we started, he started the business, but, we started to do it together. And that's another experience actually to get into that probably had a big impact in my life. We had a falling out, which sucks because none of it was intentional. We had a big falling out over this.
You and Ricky?
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, I was dating this girl, Karina, who lived in, I was with her for the whole time I was in the military. It was 5 years that I was with her. And I would always fly back and forth, And we got really busy, and so you need to ship things. I mean, we were working out of a garage. I mean, literally, we're working out of a garage, and so one of us would have to take stuff to FedEx and this, and then finally we got big enough that UPS would come pick up, but you had to box it. We had about, but I mean, man, our customer service, like you called, I'd put a sock in my mouth. I mean, dude, it was the same. I mean, whatever we can come up with, but I mean, we started to sell. I mean, $400,000 worth of stock. I mean, it was a lot, I mean, and the margins were for 21, 23-year-old kids. It's pretty damn good money,
Yeah.
And I was gone, and my dad told me my dad needed to get a warehouse in Miami, and I was in, he's like, hey, I can help you. We could do this and this, that, and the other. I was like, yeah, whatever, because I was a young kid. I was with Karina over there, and I was just, wasn't thinking. And I didn't tell Ricky what I was like doing is the point. Like I didn't think about it because there was nothing malicious. Does that make sense? So I didn't think about it. I just said, hey man, I told our distributors to start sending what I would order down to where my dad, so he could box it and do everything. But they didn't want to rely on him to do it for me. Does that make sense? So sometimes he would get busy, he's got his life and he's got his stuff. So that happened, and again, trust me, it was not malicious, but for, just we had a big falling out because he felt like I was trying to go behind his back, and I was like, dude, that's not the case at all. And so unfortunately it ended something nice. Does that make sense? Like, even though it wasn't malicious, it was the first time I had an argument, and it was over money, and what an ugly argument, because it was like, I didn't mean like that at all, but I couldn't get through because he was so hurt by it, and I didn't have the skills to communicate when somebody was angry. Does that make sense? Like, it's very hard to communicate. If you're angry, it's like, it's very difficult. I didn't have like, hey, let's check this. I didn't have any of those skills. I mean, I just didn't. So I lost a friend for a long time, a very, very long time. And now we're speaking again.
Good.
But it sucks because, dude, we went to school together every day. Incredible memory. I mean, he was a great friend. I mean, so I regret, that's one massive regret in life that I had to learn, and it took a long time to learn, because it was just, there's when nothing is malintended, you know what I mean, and you lose somebody that close and you can't communicate it, like you just can't, you just he had his things to say, and each of us was right in points. Does that make sense? Like, there was nobody wrong, right. But you couldn't meet in the middle.
It was never going to end.
Yeah. You just couldn't meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And then long story short, I continued to do it for a little bit longer. Now we're stepping into 2006. Okay. This was 2006, almost 2007. And I had this business that was doing pretty well. Again, when you're that young, 22-ish, right? And you 22, 23, and you're making six figures. God, you feel like a god, right? I mean, it was, you're feeling really well. But my life goal was to go to med, right? And I applied to schools. I applied to medical schools, and I got invited for a couple interviews. But in the military, I probably, you need 120 credits to have a bachelor's, right? And I probably had 200 something. But man, you talk about like stability. Like, when I left to go to the military, I never spent, to put it in perspective, from 2003 to 2012, I never spent more than 6 months in the same place. Except for a 1 year, 2-month stint for med school on the island. Okay. And I'll get to that. So that was the longest I stayed until residency. Imagine that.
Wow.
It was, so 9-10 years of every 6 months, always somewhere different. Sometimes 2 months, sometimes 4 months. It was, I didn't think of it as chaos, if that makes sense, but it's like,
It's almost nomadic.
yeah, exactly. So that's why it's like, when I started, when we went to Argentina, did that, stability at 10, and then, complete randomness.
It's not random.
Well, right. I mean, it was actually, I mean, I could, each place. I mean, my story, I'll probably, as you go, you'll, so I applied and I had plenty of credits, but some of the schools, what they said to me, they're like, hey, we'll accept you, but it's going to be for the following year. I want you to come and I want you to do one semester here so we can award you a bachelor's, right? Even though I had a bachelor's, as far as credits and all that stuff goes, they wanted me to get the degree and then they would let me start the following year. And that was October, late October. Okay. When you start to get all the stuff back for like interviews and stuff. And the problem is, like I said, I was in South Florida. Here I am trying to go to med school, and everybody's telling me that I'm an idiot. Everybody's making millions of dollars off pre-construction, $20,000 this, and selling it for $100,000. The boom, of real estate. And I said, I looked at everybody's like, this is ridiculous, guys. These people are owning $3,000 or $4,000, 3 or 4 homes. Like, they're firemen. Like, no offense. I mean, like, they make good money, but not to own 5 or 6 homes. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is going on here? My father bought a house for like $250, and the neighbors sold their house like 4 times. And it was like $400, $550, $600. I was like, this is a 1,800 square foot box. What is going on here?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and everybody's job is like, I'm a used car salesman or a car salesman or a car wash, and I mean, there was an industry down there,
right?
Very, very, very small. In Miami, there was a little bit, but there's really not a lot of industry,
right?
And I was like, not only was that a turnoff, but I was like, I wanted to go to med school, so I did that, and I applied to Ross University, which is one of the top end Caribbean schools. I applied, I think it was like November 10th or 11th. Got an interview 2 days later for the 15th. Then got invited to a spot to start after Thanksgiving, which was like, I guess, the 25th or something. That was it. So I was like, Dad, I'm out. You can have it. Gave the business to my dad and my brother. And I said, I am going to med school. And my dad was pissed for a little bit. I think he was pretty pissed off. He's like, we got this business, things are going well. And I was like, yeah, but, and then, obviously, like, that died out quick. Don't get me wrong. But like his initial reaction, was like, what do you mean? Like, how are we going to, what are you talking about?
Right.
Which, by the way, did not take me aback. I'm saying it this way, but it's like I just didn't care. Like I at this point in my life, basically since when I was 13, 14, 15, paying for stuff, I already had a little bit of an attitude of I'm paying my own way kind of thing. Thanks, Dad. Actually, you brought me to independence.
Right.
I say, this is independence,
and that built independence mixed with I know what I want. And I wanted to go to medical.
Yeah, that was it, Yeah. And and I told him, hey, I'll help you as much as I can, this, that, and the other. And I went to med school, which was in Dominica, not Dominican Republic, but actually Dominica. Beautiful island, about 29 miles long, very virgin. It's they got their independence from England, but so they had a prime minister there, but he wanted to keep everything very natural. So there is a cruise ship that goes into Roseau, the capital, but it doesn't actually dock, and it's like once a month. So it's very, very, very natural island. At least it was. Unfortunately, the school has gone because they had like back-to-back Category 5 hurricanes. Very liquidated it. But we were very good for that island. It was beautiful living in that area. One of my professors, Dr. Meisenberg, who was biochemistry, was actually down there for research, and they had the highest level of centurions. But they're not very healthy people. Like, I mean, island people in general, they could have diabetes and stuff like that, but they had an incredible longevity, right? And his studies, the way he pronounced it wasn't the greatest studies in the world for it, but essentially they had a high level of centurions, and he based it off IQ, which I don't think that's true, because I think the people down there actually were incredible. Were very nice and very I mean, they made things out of nothing. So I think he based it off of IQ, which I don't think you can put everywhere in the world. Does that make sense? IQ is specific to drive, goal, and it's not just,
yes,
so he based it off that. But in the end, I just think also I think it's the way their spirit is in general. Like you have somebody there that's 100 years old and still mobile because they went and they made the flour
a different culture.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and that was their job, but they were smiling and they could talk to him and they were loving, and so I don't think that IQ had anything to do with it. I think it's purpose, goal, and and a spirit. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember there was a 100-year-old lady that every day she made the dough for the bread, and she would walk it down this hill like this, you know what I'm saying, with her cane and and the flour, walk it down, and that was the dough for the bread, and she did that since she was probably 9 years old in the same house. So but he related it to IQ, saying that area, like the average IQ was 72, which here would be very, very unintelligent, basically. But that was not the case down there at all.
No.
But the island was gorgeous. Lived on the beach there. Went to school. Left there. Went back to Florida for what's called fifth semester. So this is where the idiocy, like, why are you wasting your time going to school and getting in debt? Like all this stuff. I was like, and this is 2008. I was like, dude, it's a financial crisis. Like. And all, but they don't feel anything. They did, by the way. All of them felt it. Don't get me wrong, but they're just so fake you would never know. Does that make sense? Like, say, that like they just got another job at another car dealer or something. Like that one sucked. The manager was terrible. Like now I'm selling coffee, or I'm working for my dad's company out of Venezuela. It's like, what do you mean you're working on your dad's company? Your dad steals money from the government in Venezuela. You can't work for that. Like that's what was there, before. It's like a lot of those people, that I work for the government of Venezuela. It's like, no, you don't. You're on your cell phone at Starbucks every day. You don't work for anybody. You're like, you just, that's what they do over there.
So the culture in South Florida was just very
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no drive. And by the way, I went to a private school, which my friends from private school were totally different, but where I lived in Weston, that area, it was all people from Venezuela or Argentina and stuff like that. And that culture was different than what I went to school for. That was like, so all of them were going to work for their parents or this and that. It's like, they don't have anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially in a turmoil country like Venezuela. Like, right. What is there's no, so they would take, jobs and stuff. But they believe in it so much. Does that make sense? That they make you feel stupid for going to school. Like, it was really not easy. Seriously, like,
right.
If you are not a strong-willed person, you would get left behind the dust, man. You would quit school and try to do that and end up how they are now, which is just oddball to oddball job. I mean,
falling into that transit.
The transit, I mean, it's they're on boats every weekend though. Yeah. Their life looks good,
but it's fake.
But it's
so you got back there for the fifth semester, and then.
Fifth semester.
Somehow.
Yeah.
You made your way here.
Yeah. So, well, no, hold on. We haven't got to the first divorce yet.
Oh.
All right. So, fifth semester, I'm there. I'm studying for my first boards. Okay. So it's a semester, and I'm there, and start going out. And at that point, you start to think about all your friends are getting married.
Right.
So it's like, why aren't you getting married? So I met somebody named Jennifer. And she was a very nice girl, very, very nice. And I was on autopilot, man. Everybody around me, I was there. I would say this is another big regret in life. Okay. So I met her, and it was just like kind of easy. I was working 90 to 100-hour work weeks in school, right? And doing my rotations. She was, we were together, and then everybody was just kind of doing things. And it's like, and all the signs, were there, unfortunately. But what I feel bad about is that I dragged somebody through something very unintentionally. Does that make sense? Like you're just going through motions, never cheated, nothing, but, I was with somebody that we really didn't have a lot of common likes. Does that make sense? Like, you know, I wanted to, when I got off work, I wanted to walk to Publix to go get a sandwich. No, let's drive and get wine. And it's like, no, let's walk. We live on a golf course, like, you know. But all those little idiosyncrasies, you know, that you don't think are a big deal, but you're just pleasing, and you're just pleasing, and you're just pleasing. And we really, you know, her family was very, you know, nice, but you know, I regret the way I left. I feel bad, you know, in that sense. Again, nothing was malicious. Does that make sense? But we, you know, we had this wedding. I had nothing to do with planning it, but you know, she wanted this big wedding, and I wasn't necessarily unhappy. I just was like a zombie, if that makes sense, right? And when we were together, kind of for the last year and a half, 2 years of school, and then when I finished, basically it was like, okay, you know, I finished and I started teaching, and then I just had time, you know, and it was just like, the hell's going on here, you know? But like, what is, you know? And then when I brought things to attention, one of the solutions was to have a kid, and it's like, no, no. I didn't think it was salvageable either, and that was the worst part, is that I knew immediately that it wasn't salvageable. There's no way. There's such big cultural difference. There was like it just was never should have been, right? And I went through motions, and I took away a marriage, right? I mean, I really regret that. I mean, I think people need to understand that. Now, we didn't have kids or nothing like that, but it's still a big deal to go through something like that, and I regret that. I regret it. I mean, you know, there's gonna be down from that. There's it's not right. I hurt somebody, you know. Now staying wouldn't is not the solution. Don't you know? But that's as individuals, men and women, you know, the what when you're going through stuff. I think people need to really understand where they are before they get married, you know. And I made that mistake. I was young. It's not an excuse, but it you know, it's a decision that has a lot of ripples, man.
Well, and you're not unique in that. Like that's a very it's a very common thing, and something that if I could be so bold, if you could come to the place to understand that y'all both did that. You didn't do it to her.
Yeah.
I heard you say that, and I would encourage anyone out there who's been through a similar experience, understand that was you two working together to create an unfavorable circumstance.
Right.
And the good thing is that you both survived it.
Right.
And you were able to take with you some valuable experience lessons and create wisdom from it.
Right.
To prevent from repeating it.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, so absolutely. I mean, after that I went single for a long time. Actually, it was probably a couple years, and after that was when I moved to Phoenix. Right, so that's where I got my residency, and so so it was it was 2015 was divorced, and then I met my wife. I met my wife in 2000. No, not 15. What am I talking about? No, it was 2009. What am I saying? No, 2009, 2010. We got divorced. I can't even remember. And I met my wife in 2015.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was about 6 years or so that I was separated, and so that was, you know, that had a big thing, you know, that had a big thing of me choosing who my partner is now, you know. Well, we'll get there. I guess we were at med school, so med school on Island, and then med school on Island, and then I met her. Yeah, I was in Florida, so we were in Florida. I met her. We were going through that, and then you know, and it was just 100-hour work weeks, busting my tail, just being on autopilot. And then that's also like, it wasn't just her, right? It's like when you come from a good family, right? Like I was on autopilot, but I also come from a good family. That's not what I wanted. You know what I'm saying? Like that's why it was also difficult, even though I abruptly I did. I mean, just like when I came to, I mean, I put the hammer down. I was like, no, this is not right. But it severed the family, right? You know, you caused that. I mean, I basically was the instinct of that, you know. Then you also learn the wrath of what happens after that, right? You know, I didn't have much, but I did have stuff from the business and stuff like that. And I was just so adamant about my decision. I was so adamant about my decision that it's like, hey, I don't care what's going to happen. Like, I got a teaching job, everything I got, I don't care. Like, it's all you, you know. It's all you, everything, you know, like everything that I have. I even paid alimony when we were barely married 4 months, dude. I even gave alimony. I gave everything that I had. I paid off her debt before for certain things. And the reason why I bring this up is because after all of that, knowing that I just left everything that I had, right? Everything that I had. Then after that, it was said that I was with her for money, which listening to other people say that, does that make sense? That hurt because that's furthest from the damn truth, right? Does that make sense? In the end, actually, it was more that I heard it, like, you know what I mean? Like that had nothing, absolutely zero, anything. Like it's so not me. It has nothing to do with me. And that was being spread, you know, by people there, and it's like that I think her brother said I needed her for legitimacy because I was going to an island school. I mean, it was like such a pompous bullshit thing to say. But there's a lot of hurt that comes from anybody, you know. Again, with water under the bridge, I think everybody can react in different ways, you know, protecting, and you know, you can't hold anybody's water on that one, you know.
Right.
But man, that put me into like a down, you know.
Right.
Like you start to question yourself, like, hey, did I do this? No.
Right.
I left with garbage bags, man. Like with my clothes. Like
sounds as though that gap between the end of that relationship and meeting your wife, you spent a lot of time, whether it was direct or indirect, just reflecting, like, okay, who am I? How did that happen? And then how do I not?
Who do you want to become?
Who do I want to become?
Exactly. So that transition of when I went to, you know, when that happened, I went to the island, right? Which is nice because basically, like, it was Freeport, Bahamas. Actually, I was teaching, and I taught there for about 9 months while I was waiting for residency to start. Beautiful, beautiful little island. It's small, it's tiny. Every day I would walk, and I had these two manta rays that were growing up together, mama and baby. That every day around 4:30, when I would walk to Port Lacaya, to go get some food, they would be walking next to us. It was really gorgeous, real soul searching and stuff, and you know, from there, you know, stayed single the whole time there, and then I went to, you know, Phoenix, which pretty much was single, but started kind of dating, and like you said, find yourself, right? So almost like you almost think you're damaged goods, right? You're a divorcee, you know, and you know, you start talking to people about it, you know, no kids, but you start to talk about it. It's like, so I was also young, right? So like you're dealing with people who haven't gone through adversity half the time, let alone my life, which is already most people's lives, you know, a military career, a business, and med school. Like, you know, what do you, there's not, you know, kids nowadays under 25 don't have a lot of life experience, you know.
That's right.
And so I was there, and that was a big soul searching, right? Like, you know, who are you? You know, you're meeting people, you're doing this. And I met my wife 2 days after I told myself, where I was finally kind of comfortable in my skin, and I said, you know what? I don't want to meet anybody. Because in residency, you say you kind of want to meet somebody. So I was job interviewing. I got a job interview. I was going to go from, you know, peanuts to big old almonds of money, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do some travel medicine. I'm just going to rack up the bank. I'm going to pay off my student loans. This was 2 days before I met my wife, okay? 2 days before I met my wife. Like, and I'm going to be, you know, so I'm going to stay single, you know, and okay. I met my wife at a coffee shop, okay? It was Lux Cafe off Central in Phoenix. And I always used to study. There was a table like this, and at this end here, it was on the wall, and the chargers were there, and that's where I liked to sit. There was only one seat available. I saw it, didn't even see her really. I just went in, I saw this here, put my stuff down. I had a sandwich from next door, which is Pani Bianca, which I don't know if you know Bianchi Pizza or ever been like. He's actually on a Netflix special for his pizza. Okay. And he's got a sandwich shop. It's all natural. And it's a tomato mozzarella, with olive oil and then a side of balsamic. Okay. So I would always go. I remember it. Trust me. I put down my thing, you get your computer ready, and then I got my coffee, I got my sandwich, I open up my sandwich, I have a bite, and then immediately it's like, damn it, just pee so I can just sit down, and then go at it. I look up and I see her, this beautiful, she's gorgeous. And I said, as a joke, I said, because she's staring, not really at me, she's looking at my sandwich. But I say, hey, I'm going to go to the restroom real quick. Do you mind watching my stuff? She goes, yeah. And I said, and then she didn't even look up at me. And I said, and you have a bite if you want, as a joke. So I go to the bathroom and I pee. And I'm probably back in 3 minutes. Dude, I come back and she is halfway through my sandwich. Okay.
It was joking now.
Right, exactly. So I was like, all right, well, pretty much I was like, oh, how about, can I feed you later? Do you want to go on a date or something? And she's like, yeah. So then we're sitting down and put my headphones. I just saw her say and just, smile back and forth or whatever. And then she's about to and so I said, what's it called? I at that point I was going to get a refill and I was like, hey, I'm going to get a. She goes, oh yeah, I'm going to go. And I said, oh, okay. So get your number, get her number, and I get up to go get a cup of coffee, right? Like a refill of coffee. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to go. And she was already, packed up and stuff like that. So I remember I get up, right? And I'm walking towards the thing, and it's a pretty busy place. And all I hear is like clack, 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 clack. And I look back, dude, my wife Yahida, like she's bolting out the door in crutches. I had no idea she was in crutches. Oh. And I was like, what just happened? Like what is wrong? And then it's like, what is like, who is this girl? You know what I mean? Like, cause I just, and then she gets in the car. She's like, I just twisted my ankle. I just twisted my ankle. That's all it was. And I was like, what? Like, no, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, what is going on? She was just bolting, dude, out the door because she didn't want to know. She didn't want me to know that she was in crutches.
She was embarrassed.
She hit like 3 chairs, like on the way out.
Gosh, that's great.
But like she was determined. She didn't fall over, nothing. She was determined. Like she was getting out. But then she texted me. She was like, I just twisted my ankle. That's all it was. That's all it was. That's all it was. It's like,
that's great. Yeah. That is awesome. So that's 2015.
Yeah.
How long?
And I met her on my parents' anniversary of March 11th.
Oh,
that's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
special.
Kind of cool.
That's kind of cool. I love it.
Yeah. So, and 2 days after I said, no way, I want to meet anyone.
Life change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't claim it because you may not get to keep it.
No, I know. Yeah. So be careful what you want. And so I went into that relationship with telling her off the bat, hey, look, I got a job, but it's not far. Actually, it was in Kingman, so it was like a 2.5, 3 hour drive on the way to Vegas. It was a locums job, there, but I really liked it. And it's 7 days on, 7 days off. So the first date, we have a first date, and I actually cooked for her because I said it was like, if you have a sprained ankle, like, you want to come over, I'll make some food. And I made, it doesn't sound good, but I made lamb and tuna. Lamb chop and like a nahi tuna steak on like cucumber and corn, cilantro, like mix. And it was delicious, but like lamb and tuna fish.
It is an odd combination.
Yeah, but when you hear it, it's bomb. Yeah. I mean, it's a seared ahi tuna and and lamb chops, grilled lamb chops. And, we hit it off. I mean, the first day we hit it off, and because of everything else and finding myself and saying I'm going to do it, I was very free to just tell her everything. I just told her about the divorce, told her about the job, told her about everything. and so was she. And then on the third date, she was leaving my garage, and by the way, it felt very free, by the way, because I knew she knew that I was doing this, right? And on the third date, she goes, "I got to tell you something," and I was like, okay, and she's like, "Well, I just don't know, I'm scared." I was like, "Listen, do you want to like unleash garbage, anything I haven't said?" And I just thought of like other little things, that skeletons, I guess. And I was like, do you want to go first?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'll go first, and she was, "I have a kid." And I was like, "Okay." She goes, "Does that bother you?" I was like, "Well, I mean, it's not my first choice. I don't want to meet him tomorrow, but this is really nice. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is really, really nice. Like I don't have a problem." And I also said, "And by the way, blah, 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 divorce, blah, 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 like just spit out, get it all off your chest." You know what I mean? And
the pressure's off at that point.
There's nothing to hold. There's nothing like diarrhea of the mouth of like throwing it all out. And she went home and saw each other and then about a month later, my mom comes to visit, and I don't introduce girls to my mom like that. I'm not saying I have it, but my point is like they're not the fling of the week, and I had a dog, Biwe, who's still around, and she's there after she met Yahida, and she met Santiago, and the next morning I wake up and I'm walking my dog. I made coffee for us, and I'm out there and I'm walking the dog, and then she stands next to me outside, and she's like, "No, thanks for sharing. Like, what do you think?" And I said, I mean, I really love it. I didn't expect, when I said to stay single, to meet a single mom, and my mom goes to me, she goes, "Fucking tell me about it." Walks back inside. And then I realized it's like my father's first wife died incredibly young, Marta, of breast cancer. Wow. So my brothers and sisters are, which you would never know from anything I tell or anything of our definition, but they're technically my step brothers. And my mom, I think they were like 8, 6, and 3 or something. I mean, they're super young.
Yeah.
My mom just goes, "Yeah, tell me about it." Just walks back inside, and I'm just like, touche. Like, what does that matter, man?
Right.
That's what you grew up with your whole life.
That's profound from mom right there.
Bless that, man.
Oh, dude.
Man. Wow.
That was like that was not even a sledgehammer. That was just a bulldozer. Just like,
right.
What? You're an idiot, man. Like, look in front of you.
You're not an idiot.
That's the wrong word. But what I'm saying is look at how beautiful that could be. I mean,
yes.
The reason why my wife and I are together is because she was a single mom. Like, I was independent. I was going into being a physician. I could just when you've gone through stuff. That's the thing. Like, she was as young as the people I was seeing, but she's gone through something. And when you go through stuff like you're divorced, no kids, and it's fine. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Right? Did you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And also you can brush things off. I mean, I think that's really the big thing. Like, all of us have idiosyncrasies. All of us have issues. We're all weird. We're all crazy in our own ways. And when you've gone through stuff, man, you can get over stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You guys.
No, we're good.
No, okay.
We're gonna have to wrap up soon, but your story is amazing.
Yeah.
And what do you got to be sorry? What do you got to be sorry about? If he has to go and we're not finished,
sure.
We'll just keep going.
Okay. But I mean, I can come back too. I mean, if you want to do that.
We may do that, but
okay. Well,
but you are right. It's it's almost like we have to go through those things,
right? I mean,
and it's all the things that even whether you perfectly knew in the moment or definitely figured out later, going through all of the trials to get through medical school, then coming in and out of the marriage,
right.
And then, like I said, it's kind of interesting how these little swirls of events will cross.
Yeah.
And here you're standing there talking to your mother, and you're like, oh my goodness, that now it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I love that part of the story.
And literally, fucking tell me about it. and just walks right back inside like nothing.
Yes.
And my mother's never been that quiet.
Right.
Yeah.
Like ever. Like, and then she goes and she sits down, just continues to have coffee, watching TV. Just like, you nailed that one, Mom.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and after that, it was, I mean, I met the love of my life, man. I mean, she really did. I mean, I didn't know what, I mean, I was in love, I guess, before, but not that love. You know, not that love. Not that love.
It's a different love when you learn to love yourself first.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And you learn to be a man.
Right.
And then you invited someone else into your life.
Right. And that was the other thing. Like, you know, even before that, the reason why I wasn't worried about it is kind of like, man, you know, I wanted to be a dad. Right. And it's kind of like, I actually, you know, if it was a year or two before, without seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, I could see where that would be a little tricky. Like there was a girl I dated, you know, before that had a kid, and I couldn't, like, I couldn't commit to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and she, you know, cute girl and stuff like that. But it was just, it wasn't like, no, you know, like every now and then I'd see her or something, but it was just never
Right.
You know, it just was not possible. It wasn't in my head. But then at that moment, it was kind of like, I can provide. I'm you know, this is great. It's a good kid. Dad's not in the picture, you know, at least for now.
I think some of those waters even run, they run deep, but even deeper. And the phrase I often use with folks is, I don't know what other ways to put it together, but kind of psychospiritual, like psychologically I can assess and I can see the situation, but when there's something more deeper, more spiritual. So like the person you met previously who had very similar life situations, there wasn't that component. But when you met your wife, it's like you can't even explain it. No, it just is. Yes, and your brother saw it.
Oh yeah,
super. Oh yeah, beyond endorsing. That was a blessing, man.
Well, my mom has never ever made a point like that to me in her entire life.
Wow,
she's never communicated to me like that ever. I've never ever felt that type of communication with my mom. Never. And it's so profound that you know that there's no way not to, you know what I'm saying? Like, she can't tell me, oh no, I did this before. No. Yes. I don't even think it was her.
It was her soul speaking to your soul.
I don't even, dude, I've never seen her do that and then sit down like nothing. Like not even go to the kitchen to go clean something. Like she just sat down. I've never seen her in a trance like that.
In the zone.
That's great.
Yes.
Yeah,
it
was
great. Thank you, man, for sharing that. And what a journey, what a story. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I look forward to hearing the rest of it, you know, but I especially love that connectedness moment, because not just meeting your wife, but that connectedness with your mom. I mean, you already had a good relationship, but after that, it's a bond that can't be severed.
Oh,
it's amazing.
Man, it was, I mean, my mom was always the most loving, but from there, to find a partner also that you can also incorporate, you know, family. I mean, that's, thank God.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
That is perfectly put.
After meeting my son Santi and meeting Yahaira, which at that time it was still pretty early in the relationship, meaning like I didn't have a ton of time with Santiago at that point either. And so, you know, so it wasn't, this wasn't like, you know, here's this child that I have a big relationship with, or, you know, and this woman that we've established, you know, any formal role. Does that make sense? It was more like introduction, and it was still pretty early in the relationship, but the relationship, you know, between Yahaira and I grew so quickly, you know, even though, you know, like I said, like after she ate my sandwich, you know, like I already took a job, you know, that was travel medicine, right? You know, and it wasn't far, you know, it was like a 2.5 hour drive, but it was still 7 days there and 7 days back. And I think that's one of, you know, a lot of men won't think is like, oh, how are you, you know, it's never first on the list, I guess, to date single mother, right? You know, like especially at my age, young, you know, at that point, right? And so when it initially started, I think one of the big things is when one, you are an established person now, right? You know, I was coming out of residency, like real full career. And, you know, I said to myself, I don't want to meet anybody because I'm going to do this. And then you meet somebody. And, you know, what makes a good relationship is, you know, how honest you are in the beginning. Because when you're at that rate, you know, 28, 29, 30, everybody's had exes, everybody's had issues, everybody has, you know, call them skeletons or past or your own idiosyncrasies that it's hard to be with somebody the older you get, right?
I mean, everybody's carrying back.
Everybody's carrying back. Well, not only that, everybody has what they need, and right? Want. You know, and want, right? So we established very quickly, you know, that it's like, hey, I'm going to do this, and I think it's because when you've gone through something like I went through the divorce, and she went through a terrible, you know, situation where, you know, the father was never involved, and she was a single mother, right? I mean, and when you have gone through something, though you have what you want, you also like don't let little things bother you either, right? You know what I'm saying? Like there's other things that are more important. Like if this person doesn't fit, this is gonna fit. This is my child, right? Just like, you know, for a divorced person, it's like, hey, you know, I know that I can't live with this. I think that's the biggest thing you learn in a divorce. And a lot of people talk about wants, but after a divorce, I think you learn what you don't want.
You find your boundaries.
Yeah, you find your boundaries, you know?
Yeah.
So that was very quickly, you know, we were able to, you know, on date 3, this is before, you know, before she met my mom and my mom met everybody. I'll never forget, it was a third date, and, you know, people were like, oh, when do you say this or when do you say that? Like at that point, I didn't say I was divorced, right? You know, or anything like that. And not because you know, it was just the conversations that, you know, we went the first date, we had dinner, the second date, we went hiking, we did camelback, and it was like more of an adventure day, you know. And then the third date, you know, she came over again, and she was leaving that night, and she became like super flustered. I was walking her out, and we were walking out through the garage, and she was like flustered. She's like, I gotta tell you something, you know. And I'm just like, okay, well, you know, like, what do you like? You want to just I don't know why I said it, but I just said, hey, do you want to get rid of all the baggage in a couple sentences? You know what I'm saying? Because we were so good. Like, I mean, it felt really good. It was very fresh, very easy, right? And she goes, okay, well, I have a kid. And I was like, all right, well, I've been divorced, you know, like, you know, and, you know, this distance job and, you know, all of that. Like, you know, I don't have any kids. There's nothing, you know, from my past marriage, but that's there. And, you know, and she goes, well, does the kid bother you? And I said, well, I don't want to meet him tomorrow. Right. But I don't mind where this is going. I mean, you know, we've been honest with each other. Like, and it wasn't lust, you know, if that makes sense. Like, it was a very pure, like, man, this person makes me feel good, you know?
Right.
And it was the first time, you know, first time I ever felt that. I mean, I think you feel it and you feel butterflies with other relationships, but I never felt that comfort, you know? That balance, right? The ability to just talk to somebody and say that you're divorced, and it's like, okay, you know, like the acceptance of people who have gone through things is unlike any other.
Yeah, I felt the release from vulnerability.
Yeah,
you're able to be vulnerable and not be afraid.
Very vulnerable, and just, okay, lay on your judgment. And it was like, and it's basically two spades saying that they're spades, right? I think it's the right thing to say it. Like, it's like, well, I mean, how am I going to judge you? You know, like, there's nothing to judge you for a divorce. There's nothing to judge you for being a single mom. You just said it, and it's like, all right,
next.
I'll see you tomorrow, right? He goes, all right. So literally, that's how it went. It's like, okay, see you tomorrow. Yeah. All right. And, you know, and that's and that's kind of why when my mom came, about probably like just over a month and a half or something of us dating and seeing each other often, you know, we went to, basically they came to the house, we ate, we went out to eat and stuff and had a good lunch, and they went home, and then there was, at that point, it was like 7, 8 o'clock at night, with the hour change. So like my parents went to bed, and the following morning, both my wife, my mom and I wake up early. So it was like probably like 6 in the morning, and I'm walking the dog outside, and I made coffee, and so I'm sitting right there where let my dog go, and then she walks outside, and she goes, "It's all right. So you don't normally introduce us to like, I'm very conscientious of that, and I said, no, but yeah, I mean everything's really good, and she goes, yeah, you look happy, and then I was like, yeah. So I never thought the whole single mom thing, and that's when she goes, and I'm sorry I'm going to say the word, but she goes, yeah, fucking tell me about it. And just drop the mic, and that's not the way she normally talks. Like I said, normally she's would say more, but she just mic dropped that on me. And I was just like taken aback. I was like
Stunned.
I was stunned. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? In my head, right? And then, when you think about it, it's like, yeah, I mean, my brothers and sisters, so my sister, who's the oldest, my brother, and then my brother, Lonnie, Leonardo, and then Christian, like, they're technically all my stepbrothers and sisters, like, my father's first wife died of, unfortunately, very young, of breast cancer. And then, then my father met my mother, and, they were kids. I mean, they were babies. I mean, for the most part. My sister, well, they remember. Does that make sense? But really, my sister was the oldest, was the one that, still was the one that remembered her mother the most, right? Of course, and my mom took over, and they were kids. I mean, they were kids, and my mom, imagine that, right? Like, imagine someone taking over 3 kids, right? Like, and it wasn't until probably I don't know how many years later, I guess. I don't know how long they were married before she got pregnant with me, but there's a 10-year gap between my brother and I.
Yeah.
But I think he was 3 or 4, if I remember correctly. Yeah. He was probably like 3 or 4 when they met. So it was, I mean, yeah, and it's funny. Sometimes you don't, how could I have said, how could I have thought about a single mom situation where, you obviously look for what right? I mean, my parents have an incredible marriage, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with it in my house, and my brothers and sisters, I couldn't even call them stepbrothers, like it doesn't even register, for any of us, right?
That's beautiful.
But before that moment, there's another that I was like, that's not for me now. And I think that's also from the day that I think that had a lot to do with the fact that I got a job and finally see light at the end of the tunnel. Medicine is a very long road, and
absolutely.
And there's so many steps, right? There's so many steps that you never really are allowed to really just relax and say, I accomplished something, which is terrible, which is actually quite terrible, because I think that's something that is a problem for everybody, not just people in medicine. Is like, how often do you just stop and say, you've already accomplished a goal that you said you would be proud of.
Inventory of your
right?
Success.
And I would tell you that I have a lot of problems with that, and I'm sure a lot of other people do. Like, you take this big exam, and then this big exam, and then that big exam, and you have one day where you celebrate, and then that's it. You forget how important that step was. And that's why I finally saw light, of being done. Turned off.
That's okay.
Okay. So finally in attending, where it was like, no, I'm accomplished. Like, I'm a man. I mean, imagine that. Like, finishing residency was what I thought finally made me responsible. Like, what a joke.
That was your mark.
Yeah, that was a mark, like what kind of a joke. I mean, if you think about it, like, you've done so much already, like I was already, in the military. I owned a business. I've been all over the world.
Yeah.
And the adultness, if you want to call it that, like, was being able to look at the fact that I was going to finally finish residency.
Yeah.
What a shame. I should have enjoyed other moments probably a little bit more. No,
Yeah.
I don't say that like shameful, but
so advice
open up,
folks would to go back and don't waste that little enjoyable
don't. Yeah, I mean, I think, and it's easier. I think, I mean, all of us, right? I mean, when you go to the, I think something as simple, going to the park with your kid and being able to sit down and not get up after 2 minutes and just look at the trees, right? Like,
and not be looking at your phone while you're
not be looking at your phone.
in that moment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
or mealtime at your house. Those small things,
right?
Yeah, that's good advice for us as coaches, because our part of our thing is to drive people toward their purpose. Be driven. But we need to remember to remind people, like, hey, but pause and have those moments. Like
enjoy it.
Right.
Enjoy it, whether it's a park moment or whether it's a small accomplishment at a developing level.
Right.
I know, because I know there's more levels to go, but I'm still at this developing level. But you know what? That was cool.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how like the small things that you look back on are what had the bigger impact than, say, you had this mark of achieving the end of your residency as this big finale. But now looking back on it, now that you have matured and you've reached a much higher spot, you can look back and you probably look at some smaller moments as more critical times, more pivotal times, more valuable times in your experience.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the graduation of residency is not even on my, I mean, it's a radar mark, but I mean, I don't remember it. Does that make sense? It
makes total sense. And I want to help you. I want to relate it to something. I'm going to just kind of use this as an example. As parents, we oftentimes miss the things that mean the most to our kids. I'll give you something that my daughter shared with me yesterday. My 17-year-old, we have a bunch of daughters, but my 17-year-old shared something with me yesterday. We were driving in the truck, headed back home after a counseling appointment. And she said, "Dad, do you know one of the first memories that I have with you?" We adopted her when she was 6. And I said, "No, share it with me, honey." So she starts to tell me, and she said, "It was my first time I got to ride in the front seat with you while you drove your truck." And she said, "I looked at you," and I can remember the moment when she reminded me. She said, "I looked at you," and I said, "Dad, I want to do like you and Mom do." And I remembered this when she said it, and I said, "What does that mean?" When she asked, when she said it, she said, "I want you to hold my hand like hers." So I reached down and I put my hand down, and she put her hand in mine, and I closed my hand, and she said, "I could remember your hand was huge and it swallowed my whole hand, but it made me feel safe." And that was just a small little moment, but it meant the world to her. And it's just like, if you look back on your life in your childhood and all the way through, you remember those little things that made the big impact. It's not the residency completion.
No,
it's not those things are just steps.
Yeah, it was just exactly that. Like that's exactly that. Oh, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
that was I got my hair. No, I mean it's I remember I told you in the about my first memory with my father. It was something similar. Like he was throwing me up. I remember his chain. Actually, so I'm wearing it today. So this one's my mom's. My dad has one almost identical, and I remember, he did this right, and then it would hit, like I remember hitting it, on the way down, and and it was, and I just remember, and I was, my mom always says, "I don't know how you remember that," because I was 1 or 2 years old or something, like I was literally I don't even know. I don't even think I knew how to swim. It was just throwing me up in the pool, and those things, like what an impact. Whenever I actually, every single day that I see my dad and he's not wearing a shirt or something, I immediately go to that moment. Immediately. Like it's unbelievable, the power of a memory.
Yes.
Imagine the impact that you're having right now on your son and your daughter. So those are the moments that we should endeavor to live in, to provide those moments for our kids and for our family, and even for your work colleagues. You're going to have those small moments that mean the world to them. Right. So that's powerful that you went into that subject.
It's all of those. Yeah, and that's kind of when you look back. I mean, I guess from that stage, I could say we could go into another stage of my life that was not far after that. Like, we made a decision to move to Texas.
Best choice you've ever made.
That's right. So it was kind of, I finished residency, and immediately, I knew she was the one for me, and it wasn't proposed yet or nothing like that. Yeah, right. Mama gave gave the check mark. And so she was staying with me a lot, and then I was like, you know what, like, it was less than 4 months out of residency, and bought a house together. And then unfortunately, kind of right after, my son's father, the biological father, he got out of prison. Okay. And it was a little complicated because we got bad advice, unfortunately, from an attorney where, he was never on the birth certificate, and she wanted to sever parental rights, and unfortunately, this attorney took us through a little bit of something, like he got him on the birth certificate in order. Yeah. Well, whatever. It was not a good thing. So in order to sever parental rights, he had to, which he never had agreed that he was the father.
He had to first establish
that, and then of course, since he was in prison, and he went to prison for, I would call it something stupid. He was a young kid, and they were taking stuff from people, and I mean, unfortunately, a product of your environment. It's what it is for some.
Yeah,
some about and but when he got out, of course, I want to reestablish this, I want to reestablish that, and basically we wanted to do that so that we can kind of set some ground rules, and say, all right, we want you to, basically all she asked for was to get set up with a counselor to reintroduce into his life if you're going to do it. And it was like $80 sessions or something like that. And we got this whole agreement, and it cost a bunch of money with attorneys for us, and which, whatever, it doesn't, and then what happened is that once we agreed with that, we realized, Arizona is not a very friendly mom or dad state kind of thing. So we decided to move to Texas, where we could control that agreement a little better, if that makes sense.
Right.
When we moved, so we sold the house, which was a beautiful new house, and we loved it, and we loved Phoenix, but we came down here, and he never bothered to do anything, despite him saying that he wanted to once he got out. But we came here for safety, because in general, like, it's like, you can't have this wild goose chase, not to keep him away, because we basically lit the path for him to do it, and he just didn't follow it. So we came here because that way, if he didn't follow it, then the adoption we thought would be easier. From there, we started the adoption here. It took about 7 years to finish that.
That's not that surprising to me.
No, it's not. Actually, it's you realize that it's really incredible. I mean, we had to try to serve him, but then he wouldn't let us serve him, and then we had to put stuff in the newspaper and local radio, and you have to do all these steps that they ask you to do. And then finally, after about 7 years, we finally got it. And which is now a year and a half, 2 years ago.
So you have to establish a pattern of effort? Is that?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, and he thought that it was, I don't know what he thought, but essentially, I guess he thought it was like police or something like that trying to go after him or something. I don't know. It was, he's been in jail, so can't blame him.
Intent.
Yeah.
Intent, like the motive, like
exactly.
So working together.
So we moved down here, and then we started life here, and everything was great, and once that happened, a part of my life that happened was one of my closest friends, that I grew up with. We met when we were 11, 12 years old. In Florida, where we started to play hockey together, and then he moved back. Kyle moved back to Phoenix, so that's where his parents were getting divorced. So he went to Florida to be with his mom, and then February 4th, unfortunately, he was coming home, and some young drunk kid was driving home from a club, and he was hitting the back of their golf cart, in Phoenix. In Phoenix, the golf carts kind of take you around in the clubs. And finally, like, he got down, and and this kid kept hitting the golf club and then shot him. And that was probably one of the toughest things that put me in a pretty bad spiral. I didn't know how to mourn. I put up a wall in medicine because with patients, you deal with so much death, right? Yeah. And you have to be empathetic. You have to do that. So you put a wall in your personal life so that you can show empathy, at work, because obviously at work it's
compartmentalize. That's what
it's happening a lot more, at work than it was outside. So you put this wall up, and and that led to probably the next 3 years. The next 3 years from that was 2-3 years was probably a really bad spiral for me. Like, I didn't know how to mourn. I didn't know what the depression was. Started drinking more to not think about anything. We talk about smell the roses or look at the tree or your accomplishments. I couldn't be alone in thoughts. And it wasn't necessarily because I was thinking just about him. It was just like I knew something I had to think about and I would just avoid it. And it led to as far as being a dad, I mean, I was always there. I changed the diapers, I did this, but that put me in a place where I couldn't believe that I felt that way. You know what I mean? I couldn't believe I couldn't face it. I couldn't believe I couldn't honor him. I couldn't believe the regrets of, we were supposed to go on a trip 2 weeks before that, like spur of the moment trip, like my relationship with Kyle was pretty incredible. Like, we grew up in a time before, cell phones were everywhere, right? We had pagers and we were in the military together. So we would finally get a call or a letter to each other and say, hey, and this was September, hey, December 15th, meet me in San Diego, right? Or, February 4th, or February 10th, for, his birthday, his birthday's in February. He was, hey, why don't we meet in Dubai, or why don't we meet in, we went to Peru, like, we would tell each other, and we didn't have to talk after that. Like, here's the hotel, same hotel as last time, and we would just meet there. Like, that was awesome. Yeah. And because of that, he was the main reason why I chose the residency in Phoenix, was to be next to him. And because of that, I couldn't face it. I couldn't face it because I didn't think it was real. I was waiting for that call or email. And it almost destroyed my marriage. I mean, it did. I mean, because you're drinking more, you're not, even though you're present, you're not present. Right. And then you buckle down in work. So I became very successful in work. Right. And I would drink when I was home. Remember, I do 24-hour shifts. So I'd get home and, then I'd, stop at 5-6 o'clock, wake up, it's like, so it wasn't, never needed an eye opener or nothing like that, but it just, you weren't present on your days off, if that makes sense. Right. Mm-hmm. But it led to, that was more important than, you just sit at home versus going to the park versus, versus going for a walk with your wife, going for a jog, exercising, doing the things that you should do with your family. And it took me a long time. I mean, luckily my wife, being who she is, she's like, hey, this has got to change, so I started to go to counseling, which, the more successful you are, you say, you don't need it, I can do this myself, which is totally BS. It's completely BS.
That's actually not true. The more successful you feel,
that's
the more successful a person becomes, the more they want counseling and coaching.
When you're in a good, I think when you're in a good place,
when they're healthy, that's
right. And this,
you're right.
What happens with drinking, right, is you realize you're escaping, but you don't realize that, right? And in this society, there's two measures of success that people, I'm not saying they're the right ones. I'm just telling you, there's two measures of success. There's your house, and then there's work. And unfortunately, unless you're very mature and you're very open or have gone through something, you think the work one is more important. There's a period of time where you always are going to think you can come home in your comfort zone I'm doing this and I'm working and I'm successful and I'm paying these bills and I'm doing this, and you can take it out on when you hit rock bottom. People think they hit rock bottom because they messed up at work. You already hit bottom. You messed up your home.
Yeah.
That's the real bottom.
Right.
But you don't ever see that bottom unless you can come out of the light on the other one. You know, that's the biggest lesson, you know, that I learned. It was like the success was coming. And when you really reflect and you really see that problem and you know, can stop drinking, right? And then you see, man, what a mess up I did here, you know? And it wasn't angry, wasn't, you know, it was just, you're testy, meaning instead of being able to show your kid, you know, or like, for instance, go wash the cars, instead of showing him with him, let's go wash the cars, you know, you just make him do it, you know, and it's just like, it's not of a chore, and seeing some responsibility and seeing their dad next to him, it's just like, oh, I gotta go do this, you know. And then if they don't do it right, you're like, oh, you got, you know, and then instead of helping them, you just tell them that you didn't do it right, you know. And that's the part that you failed at. And you know what we were talking about earlier, like that's what I got to fix, you know. And because to me, what I never had a problem at work, so luckily, thank God, you know, never came to that. But
one of the concepts that we use a lot in coaching and counseling is it's the contrast between complementary behavior and complicating behavior.
Yeah.
Complementary behavior basically is like a compliment; it radiates, but complicating behavior is a consumer. It sucks.
Yeah.
And so it's going to suck the life out of something.
Right.
And like you said, family or work, or eventually we will reach a threshold of erosion. And even in medicine, by the time people reach, you know, as a doctor, there's already been a rate of decline. And
right.
so they're in pain. Well, they didn't wake up in pain.
Right.
That's a result of something.
Right.
And I try to remind people of when they come in our offices, I say, you know, when it hurts, okay, you didn't wake up like that. And so we do a little reverse engineering so we can see that pattern of complication, whatever the complication is.
Right.
And a very successful restaurateur in Houston who's been doing it for 3 to 4 decades. He also compared and contrasted success versus failure. And he said success sometimes in the hands of the wrong person breeds complacency, whereas failure in the hands of the right person could bring tremendous success. So you're sitting here describing this little failing season of life, but what came out of that, which I'm looking forward to hearing, what came out of that season is really what was bright and brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, when, you know, you have a kid, right? And, you know, some of the things that were happening, right? So, for instance, you have a kid and, you know, your wife changes, right? Her body changes, right? You know, her ability to not, you know, to be patient with everything. I mean, my wife, man, I can't, she's a saint, too. I mean, what an incredible human being to say the least. Like, you know, everybody has needs, right? And when I was there but not there, right, and doing all these other things, you know, you also don't know what you're doing, you know, like you're still a couple, right? So things like, for instance, intimacy, right? You know, you don't you think, hey, you know, let's do this, right? And you don't realize what she's going through. You don't realize that it's painful, right? You know, because of the body changes, or the mood is hard. Like she just has this baby on her, you know, like always touching her and always needing her. And then my boy who's older, you know, not getting attention, and she feels that as a mother, you know, and then you know, are trying to pounce her, you know, as well, you know, and then so there's like you know, overload, you know, and then and when you're not yourself. This was one of the things, one of the failures that I did is, you know, was you're doing that and there's a very negative reinforcement. That's not positive reinforcement. It's very negative, you know, and then, you know, you keep doing that, and then, you know, a year goes by, you know, when you have kids, a year goes by quick.
Yeah.
And now you have this year of you being, you know, smelling like a drink or something like that, and wanting to, you know, to be with her, and you didn't, and you forgot the cuteness of dating and being intimate, and maybe not necessarily being intimate, just holding her, you know, and ask her what she needs. And because you think you're more important, you know, and that's not the case. No one's more important. Nobody's ever more important. You picked a partner because they're your equal, right? And they're making you better. And that negative, you know, was something that took a long time to get over, right? And we're still not over it.
Well, what happened is you got consumed in a pattern of an addiction.
Yes.
And then in that time, you became a consumer of attention as well as chemicals. Okay. So while you were acting as a consumer of attention, you know, feeding yourself, you lost empathy. But what you created on the negative side of it were triggers in her. So every time now that she would smell you, every time that she would see the look in your eyes that told her she had these negative attachments to those, and they were all
and while still trying to be your wife, right?
Yes.
You know, and
he loves you, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you do love each other. I mean, when you pick a strong partner, they wouldn't stick around if they don't love you. You know, and that, you know, was one failure. You know, that's one failure that you for the husband and wife. You know, the other was during that time. Also, I didn't realize. And remember, we're two medical professionals. I also didn't realize how. Doesn't matter how much love you tried to give, and obviously I wasn't given the right love because of the substances, right? Like you're smothering them, right? And you don't realize how much of the previous trauma of, you know, the biological father like not being there, you know, and it doesn't matter how much love you give somebody, right? You know, if like it's innate almost, right? You know, like there's a fear, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, if my family was always there for her and knowing that I'm not going to leave. I wasn't. The biggest failure I ever did, one of the biggest, you know, things that I didn't provide for her was like that substance didn't allow me to give her that part that she needed, you know, that comfort, that I'm there, that, you know, that nothing is more power. Like I don't need anything besides you. That's a big thing. Like I needed that, you know, that disease overcame more. And it's like, she looked at it. I mean, and she's never told me this, but my guess, you know, after reflecting is probably like, I might not have left, but I'm also not there.
Well,
you know, like,
yes,
if I could be so bold.
Yeah, by all means.
We people in general, but you in your state, in your pattern of behavior, you put your faith in this substance for your escape. And she felt the loss of faith in y'all's relationship rather than you being able to lean on that relationship as your rock, as your place of vulnerability and safety. You sought.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not.
So there's a deprivation.
Yes.
Yeah.
He deprived himself, but then he also deprived her of letting her be there for him.
Yeah, and also, I didn't help her, you know, not feel that, right? So I basically did the same thing. You know, you don't have to leave to not be present.
That's right.
You know, and
that's a quote. You don't have to leave to not be present.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, and.
Words of wisdom from Dr. Adriano Goffi.
Just throwing that out there. Yeah, I mean, it's
Love it.
I mean, that was probably, when I look back, that's probably the biggest thing I could say, wow, you know, like that's a bottom. You know, that's, you know, and because how inappropriate can you think that you were any better, you know, just because you were home, you know, and luckily there wasn't a shortage in my mind, you know what I'm saying? Like I was in love, you know, like at least, you know, there's that, right? Like, you know, and, but you're right. You know, you threw the importance, the faith, you know, into something else that is just something, you know, that is, you know, in reality I wouldn't, maybe weakness is not the right word, but
it's hollow.
It's a hollow. It's a hollow presence that you put into something to take over this part when you had all the tools in front of you, you know, like, and you gave it to something else. And it's hard to see that. I mean, most, you know, and again, until you stop and until you can actually think about it and until you can reflect, like, you would just think the alcohol is the problem. No, you were the problem. You were the problem. You know, like you let that happen.
The beauty
you
part
know,
is, I love that you said that, because if you can see that, if people can see that we are the problem, then the great advantage of knowing that is we are also the solution.
Correct. Oh, it's
So
easy to throw it out. Yeah.
That, then you can heal and you can change and you can improve from that moment forward.
Yeah,
somebody used the phrase. We were in our offices are here. And by the way, it's not just a studio; it's also an office, but friends. But they used the words in looking for a relationship. I'm looking for a witness to my life. I know that's something we probably hear in movies or whatever. And I asked them to explain that a little bit more. And they said, you know, successes and failures. I need somebody who's going to witness it all. And part of that witness is also that loving confrontation. So what she did was she loved you. This is another phrase somebody used, but she loved you well. Meaning, even in your illness, I'm going to love him well. And even if that's a little bit harsh, that's still well love. You know, and but she not only witnessed you know, the vulnerability, because you lost, you know, your best friend, one of your best friends, and all of those questions and even that we feel powerless, you know, like, well, I couldn't do anything to stop that.
Right.
And I have to, my mind's trying to accept it while I'm running all of these compartments of my life. But she also witnessed you pull yourself out, which is what Rob was just referring to, which is this success story that came from this.
Yeah, I mean, so remember, I mean, I didn't know why I wanted to be a physician, but, you know, Ryan, when I was a kid, you know, passed away and couldn't save him. And I think that has a lot to do with this. You know, that I put up a wall for that one and I broke it down with, you know, these two best friends, you know, and what, you know, and I couldn't save him, right? Couldn't do anything. And then on worse, couldn't mourn him. Couldn't even listen to country music for a year. I'm not kidding. I mean, it's like, and not because I just immediately would turn it off. Like it was negative, if that makes sense, right? You're not opening your eyes. You're not doing those things. And it's shameful because he brought so much like life to me, right? And to everybody around him. I mean, everybody around him, you know, I mean, to his dad, to his friends. I mean, he would go out of his way to help anybody. I mean, he was a fireman, you know, he did 3 tours, you know, and some punk 18-year-old kid with a gun, you know, is where this person,
where the story ended,
you know, and, you know, what a promising future, promising individual. Like, I mean, he would sell. If he was out, you know, and someone was cold, he'd take his shirt off, not just because he was shredded and ripped and wanted to show, but just because, like, you know, he was giving it to you. He would give it to a guy, you know, not just a girl, you know, and just, you know, it was just felt, you know, and then you think what you think of unfortunately with deaths, you know, you can think 2 things about it, right? And I learned with him is like, I never in my life want a death to make me think that I can do something differently. That will never happen again. Never. People need reminders, you know, like a death is like, oh, I'm going to do this now, or I'm going to do that. When I stopped this and I faced, you know, what it was, right? And I faced my family, that was the real bright light. Like, never again does something that dramatic, like a death or, you know, not losing of a job. I mean, something like that. When you lose something that important, right? Like your friend or a parent.
And it's permanent.
And it is. Like, you know, I don't ever want a death to tell me that I need to do something different, right? That I'm going to stop this or, you know, like New Year's resolution is a watered down version, but like there's no moment that needs to be had where I got to do this differently. You know, like that's probably the biggest thing. Like with all of this, it's like, stop, you know, you don't need a reminder. You should be doing that. You should literally be thinking, you know, and that's why stopping drinking was very easy, believe it or not, has been very simple because I've never looked into myself. Right. So like, I don't mean write down what you need to do. You know what I mean? Like, I need to go to the grocery store. I need to write
Right.
this paper. I need to, balance books, or, I mean, really just, can you sit and say, what's on your mind? What's bothering you? What do you need? What do you want to improve? And I've never done that. As a kid, it was sports, and then military, then school, and then the test, and
Just
the test,
busy,
the test.
busy.
So I never enjoyed passing step one. I never enjoyed finishing med school. Because it's like residency's next. I never enjoyed, the steps are the exams we take, almost like the bar, but we have like 4 or 5, 6 of them. Each kind of year,
Right.
and then after. So you never you never sit and enjoy them. So I don't ever want a reminder. That's the biggest thing. Like, I'm reflecting now because I don't ever need a reminder to be able to look into myself to be better. That's where you're the problem. Like, I'm the problem for not being able to do that, and you can't do it with substance clouding your mind. It's just impossible. There's a lot of highly functional individuals that are alcoholics and
other substances.
Unfortunately, in my world, you see it. I think, the hard drugs associated with individuals like attorneys or doctors or, finance guys, very successful people, and they only measure their success at work. That's why a lot of these guys are married 3 or 4 times, right? And they don't ever see the failure, because they're successful at work, and they turn to these things, and they never self-reflect. When they self-reflect, they're like, oh, I need to close this deal, I need to close that. Right. That's not self-reflecting.
It's not honest.
That's not what you need. You know what I'm saying? That's money. What, I forget who it was. I was listening to a podcast, and it might have been even Charlie Munger, but he said, the true measurement of success, is not financial. Yeah, and of course, when you hear a guy that wealthy, you have to wait to hear the rest. But he says the real success is, it was actually Jordan Peterson. He said, is that your kids want to hang out with you when they're older.
That's a good one.
And think about that, right? Like, I have a 15-year-old that would rather be playing PlayStation, than hang out with me. And then I have my 5-year-old that she would throw anything away just to hang out with you. You know what I mean? But when they're older, when they're 20 and married, or 30 and married, and, and out of the house, that's real success, right? Do they want to come to your house? Do they want to hang out with you? Is mom and dad the people that I still want to hang out with, right? And that's the real measurement of success. And it's not money related too, right? Because how many countless homes I know in South America that they're not wealthy, and the kids are always coming home, and they're always coming for lunch, and that's really it. And you'll never get there with all these other things taking over your life, because you're not going to be fun to be around,
Right.
because you're not looking at them with priority of not just how your day is. You know what I'm saying? Like, or just like you said, you learn in failures. Like, when was the last time you asked your kid, what'd you fail at today?
Yeah.
So you can grow, and I can show you something, as opposed to tell me the good things. What? So then you can't teach them anything.
That's right.
When I'm teaching folks, and it's kind of weird to say it like this, but the fundamentals of communication. So a couple is sitting in my office, and I said, well, okay, let's just start with the fundamentals, because you'll expand it naturally. But if you can go home and ask these 3 questions at the end of each day, what went well?
Right.
Well, tell me something that went well today, and it could be one little thing. I don't need the full story. Yeah. And then the next one is, well, is there anything that could have gone better? And then, as a result of that question, and what could you have done better about that? Just those 3 questions right there is measure of success, if you want to say it like that, and then that ambition for what's coming.
Right.
And it's okay if it didn't go well.
Yeah.
Because I believe that you will.
Right.
And I can leave it at ellipsis. You will. And then you will fill in the blank.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no successful person that has not gone through trials and tribulations. Indeed. Right? There's none.
And you're attractive people in society.
Right.
Overcomers.
Exactly. I mean, and if you don't fail at anything, I mean, that's literally the definition of IQ, right? You have to solve a problem.
You're not human if you're not failing.
I mean,
you're not making growth. You're not creating if you're not failing.
Right. It's like it's if you have to fail to have a high IQ. Like, literally, like the round thing doesn't fit in a square peg. You know what I mean? And therefore you have to figure out where it goes. You have to fail in order for you to even grow. Grow your mind, right? And, so that was, that's one of some of the challenges of my marriage was, one, the substance, and then not being able to see that, not being able to see
Right.
what you're affecting, not being able to say how you're impacting your kid. When a kid is, there's a difference between a 5-year-old and you have, something that you can say it's an adult drink versus a 12-year-old, 13 or 14 or 15-year-old seeing you do that. Right. And, and then because of that, you're not as patient, they feel it, and again, success for work, I opened businesses, right? So I was successful here at the hospital, right? Became medical director, and then I opened, offices for like wellness, which is kind of ironic. Here I was with this addiction, and I'm opening a wellness center for stem cells and hormone replacement therapy, and well balanced life and all this other stuff, and almost not practicing what I preach, I guess is the right way.
Not unusual. Though.
No, I know,
Really not.
But it just fed into. We could probably call it ego, I guess. Of success, like what you can bring home and saying why you're doing more than the other person. You're doing all those things, right?
Well,
and
part of what we do in our culture, and you alluded to it earlier, you talked about the success measure being the house or the job, but what we do, unfortunately, is that we develop what we see as our identity in our career, and that's what it sounds like. Possibly what you were doing is this was your identity, so you didn't have to identify with your escapism. You could identify with
my work. Career. Yeah, the work ethic of always being there early, always working hard, being the hardest worker, and it's important. I mean, I'm damn proud of what I've done for a career. But
well, I've got a question and a challenge for you. So the challenge is, and you're already doing it, but you mentioned earlier about we've had a lot of discussion about the 2 deaths that were very impactful in your life. 2 of your best friends, one very early, and one later. So you appear, and correct me if I'm wrong, to be honoring them. Not that those deaths necessarily are a slap in the face, just a wake-up call, but rather that your life is actually honoring those people that influenced your life. Would you agree with that?
I don't think I'm not completely. I've not completely faced the last one.
Okay.
I definitely. I definitely owe a lot to him for how he pushed me. But it would be unfair for my career to honor him.
Okay.
That it's what a waste of the word honor, I think. I mean, and it's an incredible career. But
it's not just your career.
Yeah, it's
your life.
Yeah, it's I have just recently started to put my life with honor to him, if that makes sense.
That's beautiful.
And it's been a while, is my point. So it's like I can listen to country music again, and I can smile, when I hear Fishing in the Dark, and I go to the gym and I think of him, and my little girl's named after him.
And see, that's the challenge. I wanted to challenge you that the light of his life, his existence still exists in you.
It does.
And you're continuing that.
Yeah. And
honoring his.
But I just finally started doing it in my personal life. Does that make sense?
It's it makes total sense.
I mean, yes, with one of the big drives to be better and to be better for patients and be better
be a better man.
Be a better person was there. But now it's really like I have his picture on my nightstand, and I can now a lot of times I have it's you almost not turn away, but it's like you not just staring at it, if that makes sense. And and I'm happy to be doing that now, and it can get better. I'm actually going this weekend to play in a hockey tournament. That's for him. It's a KB6 tournament. That was his one of his companies.
How awesome. I mean,
yeah, no, incredible.
So like I said, there was a challenge and then a question. The question is, and I want you to be soft on yourself because you're pretty hard on yourself. You may not see it, but we see it. Are you a success?
I'm getting there. I mean, by all definitions of most people, I'm a success. Yes, I'm a huge success.
But it's not other people's definition.
Yeah. It's so for me, the transition at home, is in its toddler stage.
That's okay. Hey,
however, and I say that not just my direct house, right? Because, for instance, you can be short with your mom, you can be short with your dad. You can not. My success is growing every day now, especially since I quit everything, because I talk differently to my mother. I talk differently to my father. I want to see them differently. I don't just go to their house anymore. You know what I mean? And by the way, there was always love, but I can sit on that couch and just, even though I got stuff to do, I don't care.
What if you're,
you know what I mean? Like, I'm here for an hour. Even though my mom wants me to be there for 5, I'm like, Mom, give me a second.
You got your hour.
You got your hour. Because they live about an hour from my house. They live in the Woodlands, but it's I live downtown. So, so I am so grateful, and I feel so good about this success part of my life that's growing right now, because it has been incredibly rewarding. And I feel this part of success way more than anything I have done, not with patients. I don't want to, the patient is a whole nother, when I see patients, I've always that's a good, I love what I do, but the rise of, whether it's title or whether it's position or whether it's being appreciated at work, I don't think that success ever gave me as much as what I'm doing now at home. And therefore, I'm so grateful to have opened my eyes of seeing that alcohol has really took over, and it's gone. And
I'm proud of you. I want you to hear that. And I want you to hear also that I see you as successful. And it's not that to say that you're successful, in my opinion, it's not necessarily what you have achieved. It's who you are becoming. That's the measure of success, in my opinion. That's how I view success. That's why success takes on so many different forms, so many different, types of endeavors. Because it's not about what you're doing. It's about who you're becoming.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's what I see you as.
Yeah, and it's it's not just I had very close friends, okay, and Kyle was one of them, and you realize what you also alienated. So I alienated, my sister, who loves me, and not alienated, but just like, we would hang out, and then, you're drinking there, and the other, another person is Oz, someone very, very close to me, who we grew up together, went to the military together as well, in the Navy, and, we joined together. I mentioned him, and I went a long time that we would hang out, and it's like we would hang out, and I wasn't even me anymore. I was just drinking, and I wasn't a reliable friend to him. I wasn't, I didn't have my stuff together. I instead of throwing ideas off each other, it was just like, it was like this child came over, I traveled over there, and that hurt our relationship. I think it did. I mean, I don't think it didn't stop our relationship by any stretch, but we didn't grow. And I think when you don't grow as friends, you forget why you're friends, right? I mean, I never did. And again, I don't think he did either. I don't mean it that way, but it's like, why are you going to go out of your, we used to spend, either Christmas or birthdays all the time together. And then we kind of stopped a little bit. Not that we didn't talk or nothing like that, but what was he getting out of me being messed up all the time? I mean, that was affected, which, is terrible, right? Because I wasn't there for him, I'm sure, for stuff that he needed. I mean, we talked about it. It's like he was going through stuff and he didn't call me, right? I was going through stuff, I didn't call him. And it was because it's like, well, I didn't think you'd listen, is what he told me. And that hurt, right? Because I would have, but now.
But this new, being honest.
No, I know, but that's my point, but when now I realize more what he said. Like at that point, you just said, "No, I would do it," and then you kind of like, "I can't believe he would think that." It's like, now I totally understand why he would think that. It's like, yeah, I was half of the person I could be to him, you know, and you know, even friends here, my friend Andrew, you know, just you know, him and his wife, like you go out and you go to dinner and you know you're drinking and you know you're not yourself, right? So it's like not a liability, I guess you know what I mean, because it's never like out of line. Does that make sense? But you're also not that fun, right? You know you forget you know you the good conversation versus just talk about you know just sports. You know you like you forget to enjoy you know what the good joke or you know you're not as witty, you're not as clear, you're not yourself, you know
you're not present,
you know and it's just amazing, you know, and again all of this was major success, and that's why I say you know when you am I successful, it's like I'm getting there now because I got my friends back the way I want them back. I got my family back the way I want them back. I got, more importantly, I got my kids, you know, where, you know, I'm growing with them again, and I'm growing with my mom and dad. I'm growing with my wife. I mean, you know, my wife is, I literally see the way she looks at me differently.
Do you think you've learned how to talk better with your mom, how to talk better with your wife, and how to reestablish these relationships with your friends? Do you think you've learned how to have conversations with them and communicate with them because you've learned how to communicate with yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, and again, I'm not, you know, it's not, you don't all of a sudden become a master at meditation or nothing like that. You know what I mean?
Not.
But I think as soon as you can open the door, whether you get through to yourself or not, but actually just try and attempt to think about what you need, you immediately go into a conversation differently. So for instance, like, I guess, you know, all couples will have this conversation where they can, you instead of self-reflecting on somebody else's story to yourself, you're just listening to the story about how they're telling you about somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of negative energy you compare yourself in that story to other people versus just listening to the story. Right. Versus just giving it, you know, advice, you know, or not giving advice, just shutting up and saying, okay. Right. I think, you know, somebody says no one threw out the garbage today. Right. And you immediately say, it's like, well, because I was busy. And it's like, well, no one asked you to do it. It wasn't even about you. You know, it was just like, the problem is we got to throw out the garbage. The
garbage still exists.
Garbage is still there, right? You know what I mean? Like, and I think that the second that you can, and again, does that mean everybody needs to stop alcohol 100%? No, I don't. I don't. It would be a lie for me to tell you that I'm not going to have a glass of champagne at my daughter's wedding or my son's wedding. It's not about that. It's just about, you need to be very eye-opening in the sense of that it is replacing something that you may not even think exists that it's replacing. You know, and remember, we don't drink to get drunk. You can drink. I finally figured out that alcohol is really replacing your water, which it could be with a soda, it could be with a non-alcoholic Corona, it could be with an iced tea, right? You know, if you're not running away from something, it is drinking something else besides water. That's all it is. It really is. But when you're running away from something, it becomes a disease and addiction.
And you're drinking it with a purpose.
And you're drinking it with a purpose. And that's not what it's designed for.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And that's the truth. And you see that when you at least attempt to think about what you need. You don't see it any other way.
You have made some enormous strides, and you're illustrating right now why I would call you successful.
Yeah.
And something you mentioned earlier, you said, I'm not a master. Well, what is a master? What is a master of anything? All it is someone who has perfected the craft of practice. Practice.
Yeah.
So if you're going to practice something and get better at it continuously, that qualifies you as a master. So don't discredit yourself. I hear you do that.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah, no,
You're a success. You are a master. You are practicing to live and become a healthier man in all aspects of your life. Okay?
Thank you.
And I'm proud of you for that. You're doing amazing. So be cautious of your internal
No, that is it. Yeah, I internal negativity. You don't want it. I mean, there's a fine line between internal negativity and humbleness, right? I mean, and I'm trying to find that line, right?
Well, in order for humility to work, it has to be balanced with self-esteem.
Right.
So it's okay to be self-confident.
It's okay to have confidence.
That's right. And then, matter of fact, if I am self-confident, it's easy to go second. Okay, I don't care. That's the humility part.
It doesn't make me any less qualified to go second.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, your best friend didn't give his shirt away to make him feel like a better person. He was already confident in himself.
Right.
I gave it away because that's the humility. Well, that person,
or maybe to show off his abs.
Yeah, they were good looking abs. I call him Joe America, man. He was like 6'1", blonde hair, light eyes. Like, I mean, chiseled, like Michelangelo, you know what I mean? And fireman and worked out, had
my goodness, we hate them.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was, yeah, it's like, we would go out as kids, and you'd take home the 10 and you were stuck with the 9. Like, yeah, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, damn it. Whatever it was. Fine, I'll clean up after you, man. Yeah. You just throw them out in the club and it's like, go fishing, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's bait. Now
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going out.
Come on, man, we're going out. Go sit at the bar. I'll prance around you. Yeah. No,
I'll protect you from all.
Yeah, I'll protect you from all the ones you don't want. Okay, we got this. We got this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, and but yeah, I mean, that's all these things. And that's kind of the thing. I'm it's grateful to joke around with that. Like you don't do it. You almost avoid the conversation with people you don't want. Like can't smile about doing that, right? You don't think about those things. Like. Yeah, you don't remember those small moments, like I remember when the first time I was in Arizona, and his dad picked us up, and he's got this old pickup truck, he still has it actually, and his dad, so our Pops, we call him Pops. I mean, it was literally like it's a second dad to me, and so he had this arm was like super tan because no air, no nothing. So he's always in Arizona, and this arm just, white skin, and this one's like black, from the sun. And the first time he picked me up, we went in that car, we had a tournament in Vegas, and we took Barb's car, his longtime partner. And it's just, you don't think how important those memories are, because you almost, because you're drinking. You're not facing, those good times. You're not, and you're not thinking, and this is someone who's passed away. This morning, my wife sent me a video of my little girl when she would be in her room, and when I'm at work, every morning, my wife would take a video of her going to go pick her up out of the crib, and you forget those moments because you're consumed by forgetting other moments, and she sent me that. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, I remember these videos, like how impactful, like they were, and you shut your mind off to all those things that matter, like, because you're more busy in erasing other thoughts.
Yeah.
And once you start to open up that floodgate, man, the endorphins, the other night, it was a couple days ago, and I woke up at like 2 a.m, and I swear to God, it felt like it was like euphoria. Like, I woke up, and thinking, something stupid, but I just remember my kid was holding it was a picture that I had remember of, we were holding Penelope, and my son was in the back of the shower, like, and I just woke up like just head on fire of like joy, and it was like 2:30 in the morning, you know what I mean? And it's like all these floodgates of memories start to open up, Isn't
that beautiful?
And again, I couldn't go back to sleep because I was just giggling and smiling about this moment,
That's
like
great.
and it was just, it's things like that just open up your mind, and when you start to think about, what your life is, and all these moments, like it was, and I'm just grateful for it. I really am. I mean, I'm grateful to my family, because when I told them I was, doing this, like they're 100% supportive. My mom, my dad, my sister, and my friend Oz as well. Like, he actually joined me in it, and then Andy's wife Janine joined me in it as well. changing all of our lives. Like what an incredible thing to see, even though I thought I was failing him, that when I say something like this important, it's like, no, let's do it. Let's do it together.
Yeah.
And ironically, the day that I started, he texted me that morning that he wanted to do the same thing without us talking, so it was like, what an incredible thing, you're connected, you know what I'm saying? Like you were connected, like when, I believe that too. I think when you are close with somebody, like, so here we had the same thought without talking to each other,
it's very synchronistic.
Yeah. And, grateful for my wife's ability to not forget, but to forgive, quickly, right? To say, all right, I see this change, right? Like I needed that and you're responding, and then I was able in return to ask things that I need, right?
Yeah.
And she listened. Because that's the other thing. You can ask for whatever you want, but when you're not in a good place, they don't listen.
Well, you guys,
you don't listen.
You and your wife have started y'all's relationship with this very important, super important ingredient that I wish more people would adopt. More than forgiveness, she accepts you.
Yeah.
And you accept her. And y'all started it with those questions, with that unloading of the baggage early on.
Yeah.
So you have a practice of that, and it's paying off in spades. Yeah. So we're getting close to the end now, and I want to tell you that this has been an honor. It's been a great privilege to participate in the saga that is Dr. Adriano Goffi. You've got an amazing life. You got an amazing story and a testimony, not just of yourself, but that will influence, impact, and inspire others.
I hope so.
To have the internal ambition and drive to recreate themselves, reinvent themselves, and become successful people. That's amazing. So we've got some questions that we always ask.
Let's do it
when we're closing. Okay. One of us, I'll ask one, and the other will ask the other. But my favorite question is, if you could go back in time to your younger self, let's say right after 9/11, before you joined the military, and you could give yourself some advice, knowing now what you didn't know then, living all the life and going through the journey that you've been through, what advice would you give your younger self?
In that particular moment, I think I've never written down goals. Okay. Now I've always achieved them, and I was never a person to write anything down, I think that my life has been a journey that I would never trade it again, but I think if you write down your goals, you don't learn by ramming your head through the wall as much.
Right.
If that makes sense. Like, I think when you have these goals in your head and you just take opportunities, which by the way, those opportunities molded me. So I don't want to say be more committed in anything by any stretch, but I had the goal when I went to the military to serve and to be a physician, and I just took every opportunity that, even if it was a micro step up, I just said, oh yeah, they're offering this school in Kuala Lumpur. Yeah, let's go. I think that they're important to take. I think it's very important to take those risks and do them, but write them down. And on top of writing them down, write down what you did in each step. I think
I love it.
Remember what you did each time. Like, you forget that you spent 6 months in the Bahamas. You forget that you spent 6 months here. Like, I think it's quite important and I don't mean like, write novels or nothing, but I think it's important to have your little book and as you take a step, you say, and then you go on to the next one. 'Cause they're always memorable when you transition to the next move, right? Like whether it's a city move or whether it's, this a year of school or, write down what you did that year. Write down those bullet points. I think your life, I think you could, and I say this only because I don't know how to self-reflect. And I think if you did that, whether you're self-reflecting in those moments or not, I think if you write the stuff down, you start to learn and you start to look into your past again. I never did it. So I think that the only advice I could give is like, think of a system that will help you reflect on what you just did.
write your goals and then keep inventory.
Yeah, keep inventory of the steps. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't mean like I wrote this paper for this. Like, I just mean like while you were doing it, it's like, what night do you remember was the most fun, or what concert do you remember? You know, like, what are those things in that step, like, to help you later, you know, reflect on them. Yeah. Like, I don't have anything of that. I mean, you have pictures, which is one thing, but I mean, it really, like, as you go, write down a good night. You know, or a good day, or you know, or like what you hated about it, or you know.
I love that.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Don't ever change your, you know, your ability to just flock wherever they tell you. That's not what I'm saying. But whatever decision you take, you know, remember some good about it or bad. I mean, you know,
whatever it was,
you know, like, I wish I did that. I would love to read that.
That's great.
Yeah. We're no accident kind of people. We're very providential. I mean, if you ended up in that certain place for that 6 months, there was a reason.
Absolutely.
So I love your advice to former self is, you know, make note of those highlights of the reason you're here.
Yeah.
That's right. Not the what I had for breakfast stuff.
No, it's irrelevant.
And if we're aware, there it is. There's that moment.
Yep.
That's the reason I'm here. There's one of the reasons.
Right. Yeah.
In that same vein, if you will, let's do a little bit of legacy work. So now you're a husband, you have children, and so kind of looking forward to the end a little bit. Your legacy. Is there a legacy that you would like to leave that your children, who will hopefully come visit you, will be able to reflect on?
I wish. You know, and my daughter won't, but for my son, I hope he can see and learn from this transition that I'm going through right now. I think this is a huge lesson. I hope that I can portray to him of how I failed him before and how I'm trying to be better. And I think, and I say that because I think every father out there, every mother, like, if they're going through something like this, or have gone through something terrible, like, be able to say, it's like, here's a person that it really did make a change, you know, like, and tried to transition, whether it fixes it 100% or not. Be able to look at, you know, be able to accept that I think at least that I failed them for some part, but trying to be better. I think that I am not, I'm not somebody who's just what they do at work. Like, you can fail at anything, just try to make it better. I think that's the biggest legacy is, I mean, as far as everything else, like, yeah, they'll never need anything, you know. I mean, they got their trust and all that stuff. And looking back, that's one of the good things about what I did, you know, while being successful, is I, you know, was smart with that, you know what I mean? But it's okay to fail. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I fail all you want, just make sure you learn from it. I mean, that's not a bad legacy, you know. That they can look at me and say I was up and I was down, but every single time anything down took me, I fixed it.
Success lies at the end of the path of failure.
Yeah.
You got to walk through the failure.
Yeah. Well, for my little girl, I wouldn't know yet. I mean, I think you just try to make it absolutely a uphill battle for the guy who tries to marry my daughter. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
with you on that.
I feel totally bad for the guy that's got to compete with me. You know, like, and that's okay. You know, and then, and I, you know, there's two things that are really hard in medicine. You know, there's two things that are really hard. One is when you deal with NICU, neonatal ICU, or little kids. Okay, you deal with deaths, or you deal with treating them like in residency. Man, what a complicated month or so, where you can have you can have this child for an entire month, and all you do is calculate to the microgram of vitamin that they need every day for what they need to eat. And sometimes you don't see parents show up, or, you know, and they're there alone. And then a month goes by that you're there, 2 months go by and they haven't left, you know, like, cause they're just these, you know, 28 weekers or 30 weekers or even 36 weekers are just, you know, that need help, sick kids. That's a tough thing to deal with. But, and then the opposite is when you see a couple that's been together 60 years and one of them passes away in front of you. And I'm not in a rush to get to this moment, but I pray that I can look at my wife, if that moment happens, and see the love that you've seen in some of the people here.
Yes.
to just be able to look and just say, I loved you with everything I had. And
I love that.
Good or bad, like that's I hope and pray to get to that moment, to see that moment, like to see it is one of the some of the toughest moments, and a lot of people think it's not tough because these people live their life, but to see that room, man, you see, man, that was a life with purpose.
Yeah.
Isn't that beautiful? I mean, it's tragic that
it's absolutely tragic, man, but
it's beautiful.
If there's something I can, and you see it, when the wife walks in, or vice versa, when the husband walks in, and you just, it's a terrible, just this curtain, but it's so deep and beautiful at the same time.
Yes.
I mean, it's a terrible moment, but I hope I don't perfectly prefer to go, to be honest with you, and have my wife look at me that way. I don't know. You see how what it means to them, but to see that these two people, like,
they owned their life, they owned their relationship all the way to the end.
And
they possessed it and lived it to the fullest.
Enjoyed each other.
Yes.
But whatever they went through,
with purpose.
I want to get. I'm not in a rush, but when it is my time, I want to be able to close that curtain that way.
Nice.
So I gave you everything.
That's
and
beautiful.
I loved it.
There's not much more of a powerful legacy than that right there.
Nothing. Perfect. Nothing. That room, and then the kids walk in, and you feel like there's nothing else. There's no money. There's no
no. It's
that feeling as a physician that I get to be a part of, and it's terrible, but also at the same time, you talk about a reminder. Man, I hope vice versa, we can look at each other and just say, we gave everything to each other and we enjoyed this, like, thank you for being next to me through all this, like,
my witness.
It's a powerful room, man.
Yeah.
It's the
ride was great.
Yeah.
Whether afterlife, whether you believe in afterlife or not, what a way to wake up at pearly gates or whatever it is you believe in, like knowing that what you left here was everything you had to give to somebody. And that's the truth, man. Like, your partner's your partner. I mean, you picked him for a reason, like, don't half-ass your life. Don't half-ass it. All this other stuff made me half-ass it, and what a shame. Not a shame, actually, because not a lot of 40-year-olds will be able to look back on not be able to look at it now before it was a problem. You know what I mean? Even though it was a problem, like, it's not too late. The worst part is that it's too late.
Right.
Right.
That's the one lesson I hope people learn to get anything out of my story, is that hopefully it's not too late to make the change. And usually it's not. I think if you really reflect, it's never too late, right? I mean, unless you took it too far, but if you were really walking away from something, but you were still in love and you were still present, you just weren't really there, that's not too late. It's when you're not there, then not there, is when it's too late. But that I wish that upon my wife and I, to just, in the end.
Well, I love it. That's beautiful too. I'm ambitious for that same goal.
Not a rush.
I want to create that.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I love
when you see it, and a lot of times they've, the other person's already passed away, but you could feel that when they're looking in each other's eyes. You could feel it.
Well, brother, I can't think of a better way to close this. That was amazingly powerful, and I'd like you to hear my expression of gratitude to you for being here and sharing your story, not just with us, but with our audience.
Right.
I believe you've opened up, and I think a lot of people are going to be blessed. I think you're going to inspire people in more ways than you can possibly imagine. I think that there may be some people who decide to become doctors because of this. There may be some people who, in the throes of alcoholism and addiction themselves, that your story is inspirational to seek recovery. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for laying it out there, for being vulnerable, and for being soft on yourself and realizing that you are going through the steps of success. I'm proud of you for that.
Yes.
So thank you again for your story. Thank you again for being our guest. Chuck, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, just thank you. Perfect reflection.
I appreciate
that.
I mean, it's been
and thank you for being vulnerable.
Yeah, it's
try to make a difference, man.
No, and another for people is remember it's okay to talk about it. A lot of people with success are scared to talk about it. It's like, oh, what about this? Or is someone going to, what does it matter? Like let them hear it. But you're not going to lose your job because you're honest about something like, it's what it is. You were what you were, and you're changing. I mean, there's, don't be scared. Actually, be more scared about not talking about it.
Yeah,
there you go.
There you go. Well, thank you guys for joining us again with another episode of Pursuit of Purpose. I'm Robbie.
I'm Chuck.
And we've had with us
Dr. Goffi, Adriano Goffi. Nice to meet everybody.
It's been a great privilege, you guys. Have a great day.